Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're going to wake up in ancient Rome, but not as a senator, a gladiator, or even a baker. Nope, you're someone the history books usually only mention in the margins, if at all. Tonight you're a Roman prostitute. Yeah, one of the meretrices, or maybe even a lupe, which literally means she-wolf, but doesn't have anything to do with wolves. You probably won't survive this. That's not melodrama, Sam. It's statistics. Your job is dangerous, legally murky, and so socially taboo that you're both everywhere and nowhere. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and time in the comments. I want to know who else is winding down across the Empire tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before dawn, the stale warmth of other bodies still lingering in the room. The air smells like wine, sweat, and old perfume that never quite goes away. Your back aches from the straw-stuffed mattress, which flattened a long time ago. It's too early for clients, technically, but someone's already rattling around in the atrium. Probably Brynja, who never sleeps, not even during her off hours. She's older, cynical, and always up early, probably counting the night's coins or scraping wax off the floor tiles. The Lupanar never really sleeps, not in Pompeii, not in this part of town. You sit up slowly, your shift clinging to your skin from the heat. No windows in this place, just little holes in the walls that pass for ventilation. Outside, the sun hasn't broken yet, but the sounds are already starting. Vendors clanging open their stalls, the groan of wooden carts rolling over stone, a dog barking somewhere far off. You pull on your sandals and try not to step on the small scorpion that seems to live under your cot. You name it Otho, after that idiot who keeps asking if kissing costs extra. There's no real privacy here, just rows of rooms, each barely big enough for a man to lie down in. The walls are frescoed with obscene scenes, not just decoration, but a literal menu for clients who can't read. Some find it arousing, you find it a little ridiculous. There's one of a woman balancing on a man's shoulders while pouring wine, and you've actually tried that. Once, never again. The guy dislocated something and you got blamed. You pass a torch sconce and use its dying ember to light a new taper. Your first act of the day. Summon a little bit of fire to beat back the gloom. You head toward the shared basin, ducking past Merope, who's already arguing with someone about whether she has lice. She does, so do most of you. Baths aren't daily affairs for the working class. You splash cold water on your face, then rub a mixture of olive oil and crushed herbs into your skin. Your poor substitute for soap. No lather, no floral scent, but it keeps the grime from sticking. You don't brush your teeth, you scrub them. With charcoal and vinegar if you're lucky, and the powder tastes like burnt regret. Then you scrape your body with a strigil, the little curved blade that Roman athletes use to get clean after a sweat. It never really works the way it's supposed to, especially on your arms where last night's bruises are starting to bloom. Next, the hair. Yours is knotted and greasy, but you do your best with a bronze comb, pulling it into a simple twist and securing it with pins. No wigs today. You save those for Saturnalia, or when someone rich might show up. Today it's the usual. Labourers, sailors, bored shopkeepers pretending they're running errands. You smear a bit of red ochre on your cheeks and tint your lips with mulberry paste. Just enough to look worth the coin, not enough to be mistaken for a Matrona. Heaven forbid. Before breakfast, you offer a quiet prayer to Venus. There's a tiny shrine in the corner, blackened from years of candle smoke. Someone left a honey cake yesterday. It's half eaten. You whisper a few lines from memory, something between reverence and routine. Venus, goddess of love, protector of those who sell it, hear me. Keep away the drunkards who don't pay. Keep away the ones who bite. Keep my womb silent, my skin smooth, and my purse full. You know it's mostly superstition, but there's comfort in ritual. Even if Venus doesn't listen, someone might. One of the doors creaks. Your first client of the day arrives, shrugging off a cloak and trying not to make eye contact. He always looks like he regrets everything. You recognise him, a fishmonger who sells near the gate. He smells like brine and cold wine, like someone who's been up all night gutting things. He doesn't want to talk. Most of them don't. They pretend it's your idea to keep things silent, but you know the truth. If they hear your voice, it gets harder to forget you. Harder to lie to themselves. You take him to a room, the walls are damp. He grunts. You fake a sigh. And just like that, the day has begun. Historically speaking, the daily grind for Roman prostitutes varied wildly depending on where you were on the social food chain. You're on the lower rung. You're in the Lupanar of Pompeii, the most famous brothel in the city, preserved under volcanic ash like some bizarre museum of the flesh. Some prostitutes, called meretrices, registered with the state and had a bit more autonomy. Others, like the prostibuli, worked under a leno or lena, a pimp, basically. Some were slaves, others technically free but trapped economically. It's a spectrum and it's not neat. Fun fringe fact? There were actually tokens, spintriae, with explicit images on them, possibly used in brothels as currency or entry passes. No one really agrees on what they were for, which leads us to tonight's first scholarly debate. Were these sex tokens part of a secret economy? Or just souvenirs for degenerates with deep pockets? No one knows, but the idea of ancient Rome having its own weird version of adult arcade tokens is strangely fitting. You finish with your first client and check the tiny basket near the door. 2 copper asses, not even enough for a proper lunch. You mutter a curse at Mercury under your breath. God of thieves and merchants. Sometimes it feels like he invented your whole career path just for the laughs. You head back to your room, roll your shoulders and brace yourself. It's barely sunrise. This day has only just begun. The sun finally breaches the narrow slit in the wall, casting a warm stripe of light across the floor that doesn't quite reach your feet. You're sitting on your cot, legs tucked up, rubbing olive oil into your elbows. It's not for glamour, it's to keep your skin from cracking. Your second client hasn't arrived yet, so you use the lull to get ready in the only way you can, with ritual, repetition, and a thick skin you've built layer by layer over the years. Your day doesn't allow for much self-care in the way modern people talk about it, but you've got your own system. First, the oil. Then a few stretches to work out the crick in your back. Those rooms are too small for any real movement, and some of your clients like to throw their weight around. Literally. You once had a blacksmith who insisted on lifting you like an amphora. Your shoulder still clicks when you rotate it. You fish around in the shared supply basket and find a stick of coal. It's blunt and smeared, but you darken your eyes with a practiced hand, squinting into a polished piece of bronze you call a mirror. It's warped and makes your face look wider than it is, but it'll do. You dab a little crushed rose petal on your wrists for scent. Not because clients expect it, but because it makes you feel marginally more human. Outside the Lupanar, the city is coming to life. Through the cracks in the door you hear the rising murmur of the street, fruit sellers calling out their prices, the rhythmic clack of sandals on stone, the occasional shriek of a vendor being shorted. It's oddly comforting, predictable even. Inside, the Lupanar has its own rhythm. Brynja is still counting coins. Merope is already on her third client. Someone else, not sure who, just threw up behind the pillar in the atrium. Again. There's no breakfast per se, just whatever you can find or steal. Someone passes you half a fig and a chunk of coarse bread. You nibble it, trying not to think about where the bread came from or how long it's been sitting out. Wine might help, but it's too early to be blurry, and you prefer to save the buzz for after the sun goes down. And now, it's time. You hear the footsteps before you see him. Another client. This one looks cleaner, better dressed. Not rich, but not starving either. His tunic is neatly belted, his sandals newish. He asks for you by name, your work name, not your real one. The one you scrawled in charcoal above your room, Felicia. Means lucky. Ironic. You never liked it, but it's stuck now like a second skin. You lead him to the room, keep the small talk minimal. He's chatty, wants to know if you're from here, which is code for, are you foreign and exotic enough to justify my interest? You lie. Tell him you were born near Capua. Sounds far enough to be interesting, but close enough to be plausible. He nods like he cares. He doesn't. He leaves quickly, tossing 2 more asses into the basket, and you breathe a little easier. That's 4 for the morning and the sun's barely moved. If things keep up, you might be able to buy a full meal tonight. Maybe even some dried dates. You wander towards the common room. Brynja eyes your basket, then your face. You pay? She asks, always direct. Do you? You nod. She grunts approval. She's been working this Lupanar longer than anyone, and somehow she's managed to buy her own freedom. Rumour has it she still works out of choice, though nobody really believes that. What else is she going to do? Open a bakery? The conversation turns to odd topics. As it always does between shifts, someone mentions a girl in Ostia who uses linen soaked in wine as a kind of condom. Everyone laughs, but the conversation spirals from there. You all start swapping stories. Sheep bladder sheaths, sour wine douches, amulets shaped like tiny phalluses. You've tried one or two, none of them reliable, and most of them painful. One girl swears by silphium, but that herb's nearly extinct. The Empire harvested it into oblivion. A few claim they've seen it sold in back alleys, but it's probably just parsley and hope. You ask Brynja what she did before this. She smirks. "What do you mean before?" she says. "I was born behind a tavern. I started cleaning floors, then washing clothes, then warming beds. It's a progression." You nod. It tracks. Most of the girls here weren't kidnapped or sold, at least not directly. They just fell down the ladder until this was the only rung left. And here's the thing no one outside ever really understands. Some of you are free, technically. You can walk out the door legally. You're not chained. But without money, without family, without a patron to protect you, where exactly are you going to go? Freedom's a lovely word on paper. It doesn't feed you, house you, or keep the night watch from hassling you on the street. There's a knock at the side entrance. One of the local watchmen, the vigils, is here again. Not for pleasure, for coin. He wants his weekly bribe. Brynja sighs and peels a few sestertii from the locked box. For protection, he reminds you. From what? You ask under your breath. From me, he says, smiling like it's a joke. It's not. You pay because if you don't, your place might mysteriously get raided for being disorderly. Clients might vanish. Permits might get questioned. It's a dance, one that leaves you spinning. So you sit back down, fix your face again, and listen as the street noise outside swells. There's a forum day today. Lots of traffic, lots of potential. You glance at the tally Brynja keeps scratched into the wax tablet. The numbers are low so far, but it's still early. Fun historical note. Ancient Roman prostitutes weren't just anonymous figures drifting through alleyways. Some were famous, celebrated even. There were courtesans with patrons, some who appeared in poetry and others known for specific talents or traits. But for every one of those, there were 100 more like you, working, surviving, enduring. Odd fringe fact for this stretch. The Roman government taxed sex work, not just lightly. There was a whole registration system for meretrices. Once registered, your name went on a list, and suddenly you were legal. But that didn't mean respectable. In fact, becoming registered could make it more difficult to leave the profession, since you'd now been publicly branded. That's the bureaucratic double bind of ancient Rome, legal, yet stained forever. And tonight's scholarly shrug, whether all prostitutes had to register. Records are spotty. Some historians say only certain kinds, like street workers or those attached to brothels, were forced to. Others think it depended on the city. Either way, enforcement was likely as inconsistent as everything else in your life. You lie back on your cot for a moment, staring at the ceiling with its crumbling plaster. Another client is probably already walking through the front gate. You've got about 2 minutes of silence left. Maybe less. You close your eyes, not to rest, but to reset. Because the day doesn't wait, and neither do they. The third man of the day arrives just after the bells mark the second hour. You know this one. You can smell the wine on him before he even speaks. He always stumbles in around this time, fresh from some low-end tavern, lips stained with cheap Falernian, and breath like something that died in a barrel. His tunic is wrinkled, one sandal's untied, and he grins at you with the confidence of a man who believes he's charming, but clearly isn't. You muster a half smile, the kind that means, let's just get this over with. He asks for the usual, as though this is a relationship and not a transaction. You take him to your room, where the mattress is still warm from the last visitor. You don't bother pretending this time. He's too far gone to notice anything except his own fumbling triumph. He's clumsy, quick, and deeply self-satisfied. When he's done, he lingers like he might say something meaningful, but instead he just belches, fishes around in his coin pouch and drops a single bronze as 1. You stare at it, then at him, then back at the coin. Before you can speak, he's already stumbling back into the hallway, whistling something off-key. You don't chase him. You never chase. You lean back against the wall, rubbing your temples. Some days are like this. You tell yourself the better ones will make up for it. But deep down, you know the math rarely works in your favour. You pick up the coin and toss it toward the bowl. It misses and rolls under the bed. Perfect. You leave it there. Let the gods find it. Outside your door, things are picking up. The early crowd is here. The workers and traders who take their pleasures before heading to the forum or the warehouse. These are the quick ones, the cheap ones, the ones who don't care to make eye contact. They're in and out in 5 minutes, if that. No names, no conversation, no pretense. It's not romantic, and it's not meant to be. It's just part of their morning routine, like brushing teeth or feeding the dog. You hear snippets of conversation as they pass. 2 men joking about their wives, one bragging that he came here instead of temple today. A familiar cackle. Merope again, this time laughing too loudly. She's probably drunk already, or pretending to be. Either way, she's handling the crowd well. You admire her ability to detach. She can turn it all off, slide into character, and switch back out before her feet hit the hallway again. You're still working on that. You step outside your room for a breath of air. Well, as close as you can get to air in a brothel. It's thick with sweat and perfume, the scent of burning incense mixing with the unmistakable tang of bodies too close together. You tug your tunic back into place and glance around the atrium. A new girl, barely older than 14, is speaking nervously with a client. Her voice shakes. You recognise that look. First week, still hoping this isn't forever, still thinking she'll earn enough to buy her way out. You don't say anything. You've learnt not to get too attached. Too many girls come and go, some vanish overnight, others just fade into the background. A little more each day until you can barely remember their faces. You nod to her in a passing, a small gesture that says, "You're not invisible. Not yet." You retreat to the corner where someone's laid out a tray of fruit, probably leftovers from a client who thought grapes counted as seduction. You grab a handful and bite into one. It's sour. Probably meant for wine, not eating. Still, it keeps your stomach from growling. A group of men arrive together, boisterous and loud, shoving each other, like boys in a schoolyard. They point at the frescoes on the wall, laughing at the acrobatic poses painted in fading reds and ochres. One of them mimics a position with an exaggerated thrust, and the others erupt into laughter. You roll your eyes, but smile anyway. You've seen worse. The Lupanar's frescoes are infamous. Each little cubicle has its own scene painted above the doorway, depicting acts that range from the mundane to the mildly terrifying. It's both advertising and instruction manual, mostly for men who don't read. The images tell them what's available and where. Some even have crude captions, "I do it like this," or "Here's what you get for 2 asses." You've posed like those paintings more times than you care to count, sometimes even using them to break the ice. "Pick your favourite," you say, pointing up. It gives them something to focus on besides your face. You retreat to your room again, hoping for a few minutes of quiet. Instead, you find graffiti newly scratched into the plaster beside your bed. Someone's carved your name, Felicia, followed by a crude drawing and the phrase Felicissima Omnium, the happiest of them all. You stare at it for a while, unsure whether it's meant to flatter or mock. Probably both. The walls are full of things like this. Names, boasts, crude poems, little slivers of humanity left by people who wanted to be remembered, or just couldn't keep their mouths shut. Some of your co-workers take pride in these markings, treat them like badges of honour. Brynja says hers is a tribute. "A client carved that with his own knife," she says proudly. You're less convinced. Being etched into stone doesn't feel like immortality. It feels like graffiti. And most of the time, they don't even get your name right. Still, it's better than being forgotten. Historically, many Roman brothels, like the Lupanar in Pompeii, were plastered with graffiti. Visitors would leave reviews, drawings, even full conversations scratched into the walls. Some praised the women by name, others mocked them. These inscriptions are how we know many of the working girls' names, or at least the ones they used. But no one's sure how accurate any of it is. Were the names real? Stage names? Nicknames given by clients? That's one of the lingering mysteries of Roman daily life. What part of this was branding and what part was identity? And then there's the fringe detail. Archaeologists have even found tally marks beside some names, like someone was keeping score. Of what exactly? Number of clients, number of visits, no one agrees. It's another detail lost in the gaps, another fragment in the blurred outline of history. Your client count is up to 6 now. You've stopped tracking the minutes. Instead, you count coins, bruises, and moments of silence. You press your head against the cool stone wall, let your breath even out, and close your eyes. You've still got hours to go. By midday, the Lupanar is humming like a beehive. The steady rhythm of footsteps murmurs, and the occasional clink of coin against clay is the soundtrack of your life. You've already seen a dozen clients today, some forgettable, some annoying, one who tried to pay in fish, which is a first even for you. You're sweaty, hungry, and your thighs ache from too much time on your back, but there's no break yet. Not really. You're lucky if you get a few minutes to sit with your legs stretched out and your tunic adjusted properly, before someone else knocks on the frame of your doorway and smirks like he's about to ask you to paint his ceiling with your feet. This is the morning rush, the peak hours for what the Leno calls fast turnover, which means quick, no-nonsense sessions where nobody takes their sandals off. The men who come now are usually labourers, dock workers, messengers, even soldiers. Some pay well enough, especially if they're flush from recent wages, but most are just looking for the cheapest option that doesn't reek of vomit. You're affordable, that's your selling point. Not glamorous or not exotic, just consistent. You learn to move with mechanical efficiency. Invite them in, guide them to the pallet, do what needs doing, count the coin and move on. You talk less and less as the morning goes on, saving your voice and your energy. One man tries to get romantic, stroking your face like he's in a stage play. You give him a half laugh and steer his hand away. You've had this one before. He's married and feels guilty, so he turns the whole thing into a pretend love story to make himself feel better. You let him because he tips well. After he leaves, you sag onto the mattress, staring up at the painting above you. Two figures in a rather improbable embrace. You've been trying to figure out the physics of it since the fresco was restored last month. You're pretty sure one of them would have dislocated a hip. You start laughing and can't stop. It's not real laughter. It's the kind that comes from a long morning and too little food. Brynja peeks into the doorway and raises an eyebrow. "You crack yet?" she asks. You nod, still giggling. She tosses you a handful of dried figs. "Chew slow. Might be your only meal today." You pop one into your mouth and chew thoughtfully, the sweetness waking up your tired senses. You hear a thump in the next room, Merope swearing. Something fell, probably another client who thought he could pull off a balancing act from the fresco menu. You finish your snack and head out to the shared basin again to splash water on your face. Your coal smudges in the heat. You reapply with your fingers and try to remember the last time you cared about symmetry. And then you hear a whisper from two girls sitting on a nearby bench. She said she used linen, tied it off at the end like a purse. You pause, listening as they giggle and argue. The subject? Birth control, again, is the kind of conversation that never ends in this place. Everyone's heard something, cloth soaked in vinegar, amulets tied around the ankle, a paste of pine resin and dates. One girl swears by a mixture of acacia and crocodile dung, but she's clearly lying. You weigh the options in your mind, linen sheaths, withdrawal, herbal infusions. Most of it's guesswork wrapped in superstition, and you've seen the results. Two of the girls are already visibly pregnant. One's trying to hide it under looser tunics. The other jokes about naming the baby after her favourite client. No one laughs. You've tried a few methods yourself. There was a woman once, old, wrinkled, and sharp as a stiletto, who sold a potion made of silphium extract. It cost 2 days' wages and tasted like death, but you took it anyway. You think it worked. Hard to say. That plant's practically extinct now, over-harvested for the exact reason you needed it. These days you mostly rely on luck and timing. Not a great strategy, but you can't afford better. You head back to your room just as another client arrives. This one young, barely more than a boy, with nervous energy and shaky hands. First time, you guess. He can't meet your eyes, fumbles with his purse, and asks questions like he's placing a delicate order in a bakery. You guide him through it gently, professionally. You don't mock him or rush him. You've learnt that sometimes the easiest way to get through this job is to treat it like theatre. He's your audience. You give him the performance he's hoping for, and when it's over, he looks grateful. Embarrassed, but grateful. He overpays. You let him. A few extra coins never hurt anyone, and maybe you were the only thing keeping him from unravelling today. You don't think too hard about it. You tuck the coins into your pouch and whisper a quick thanks to Mercury, god of commerce, and let's be honest, probably your patron deity by now. When he leaves, you take another 5 minutes to rest. You stare at the floor, picking at a crack in the tile. You think about how much your life costs. 1 loaf of bread, 3 asses, a bottle of cheap perfume, 5, decent pair of sandals, maybe 10, your body, variable pricing depending on the hour, the client, and your mood. Sometimes you think of yourself in those same units. Your smile is 1 coin, a touch is 2, everything else has its own price tag. In the distance a bell tolls noon. The sun is blazing outside now, making the stone walls radiate heat like an oven. Inside the Lupanar, the air is thick and still. A girl fans herself with a broken tile. Another is sprawled near the fountain, dangling her feet in the water until Brynja snaps at her to move before she gives the place a bad reputation. As if that ship hasn't already sailed. Historically, the midday hours were the busiest for brothels like yours. Roman workdays often ended by early afternoon, especially for the lower classes, which meant more time for drinking, gambling and sex. Brothels clustered around bathhouses and taverns, making it easy for men to bounce from one indulgence to the next. And yes, many men visited prostitutes in groups, sometimes as part of business deals or drinking games. You've had more than one group try to turn their visit into a contest. You usually let Merope handle those. She likes a challenge. Here's your odd little historical gem for the hour. Some Roman prostitutes wore tokens around their necks listing their services and prices, literal price tags, like produce at the market. No one's sure if this was common practice or just a custom in certain cities, but the idea of walking around with a bronze tag that reads 2 asses for rear entrance is a detail that sticks in your brain like a sliver of glass. And your scholarly toss-up for today? Whether sex work in ancient Rome was considered more tolerable than in other periods, or just differently shameful. Some say Rome was unusually pragmatic about prostitution. Others argue it was brutally hypocritical. Legal, but despised. Everywhere, but always in the shadows. You live that contradiction every day. You stretch your arms overhead, trying to unkink your spine. There's a stain on the ceiling now. You don't remember it being there yesterday. You wonder if it's wine, blood, or just water damage. Either way, it's not your job to care. Your name gets called again, another client, another hour, another few coins. You stand up, paste a pleasant look on your face, and step into the corridor once more. It's mid-afternoon when you hear something that makes your stomach twist. A quiet cough, repeated twice, coming from the corner room. Not a clearing, the throat kind of cough, the dry, chesty kind. You know that sound. You've heard it before. It echoes from the same place the whisper of worry starts. Deep in your chest, under the ribs. The other girls ignore it. You wish you could. That room has a reputation now. People say there's a curse on it. Others say it's just where the sick ones go when the Lino doesn't know where else to put them. You walk past quickly, eyes down. You've already seen 3 girls disappear from that corner over the past year. One was called Aaliyah. She used to sing between clients. Now no one even says her name. That's how it works. People vanish and life goes on. No memorials, no mourning, just their perfume lingering on the breeze for a few hours longer than it should. You distract yourself with gossip, usually a reliable cure for existential dread. Brynja is muttering about the vigils again. Apparently they've raised their price. 15 sestertii a week, she hisses, counting coins with a sour expression. For what? To look the other way while we choke on bad incense? You nod, half listening. She's right, of course, but there's nothing you can do about it. The vigils are the only thing standing between you and the city's unofficial rules about cleaning up the streets. It's not uncommon for a brothel to get shut down for being a nuisance, code for not bribing the right people. While Brynja fumes, another girl, Marcia, small and bird-like, drops onto the bench beside you. She's wiping sweat from her neck and trying to brush sand off her feet. Guess who I just had, she says, and you raise an eyebrow. She grins. A baker's apprentice. Couldn't stop talking about flour. Said my thighs reminded him of kneaded dough. You groan. Did you throw something at him? Nah, she shrugs. He tipped me extra, said I was fresh from the oven. You both laugh until your stomach hurts. But then Marcia leans in, lowers her voice. Did you hear about the linen trick? You pause. The one with wine. No, this is new, she says. Linen, soaked in olive oil, all tied at the base. Supposed to prevent seed from taking root. You blink. That sounds messy. She shrugs again. Better than nothing. And then, as if reading your mind, she adds, You trying anything right now? You hesitate. Timing. She nods like that makes sense. It doesn't. But what else can you do? The options are limited, and all of them are rumours. No one really knows what works. You just try everything once and hope the gods are in a good mood. And then there's the topic no one wants to say aloud. What happens if it doesn't work? The whispered names of women who disappeared after a visit to an herbalist. A late-night knock on a midwife's door. Blood on the floor the next day. No one ever asks questions. and no one ever answers them. You've seen a girl walk in pale and trembling and come out 4 hours later looking hollow. You want to believe she just had a headache. You know better. You get up to stretch and shake off the unease, heading toward the back hallway for some air. The brothel has a narrow inner courtyard, really just a stone rectangle with a fig tree planted awkwardly in the middle. The figs are sour and half-rotted, but the leaves provide a sliver of shade. You lean against the wall and close your eyes. The hum of flies is steady, hypnotic. Somewhere nearby, someone is singing, soft, tuneless, and slightly off-key. A strange rumour has been making the rounds among the girls. Someone claimed to have seen a man at the baths wearing a linen sheath. Not a rumour you usually hear from the men's side of things. Apparently it was tied with a leather strap, and he boasted it was from Egypt. You don't know whether to laugh or believe it. You've heard crazier things. Some say the Egyptians were better at this kind of thing, that they had all sorts of birth control methods centuries before Rome even built its first aqueduct. Maybe it's true. You wish someone would bring you a scroll or two. Actual knowledge, written down, instead of all these passed down half-truths wrapped in old cloth. As the afternoon wears on, the foot traffic slows. This is the lull. The heat is at its worst, and even the most eager clients need a moment to nap or drink or shout at their slaves. The girls retreat to corners and cushions, fanning themselves with anything they can find. You sit near the entrance, watching the street through a crack in the wooden door. A cart rolls by, pulled by a pair of oxen. Children run behind it, trying to snatch falling fruit. A man hawks amulets to ward off impotence. Another sells spiced wine from a jug with flies floating in the neck. Life goes on. You think about the girl in the corner room again. The cough, the silence. You want to go check on her, but you don't. There's a line between concern and self-preservation, and you've learned to stay on the right side of it. You light a bit of incense instead, myrrh if you're lucky, and murmur a quick prayer to Venus. Not for yourself this time, for her and for the rest of you. That the coughs stay quiet, that the linen tricks work, that the vigils take their coin and leave. Fun historical fact. The Romans didn't just leave contraception to whispers and wishful thinking, they wrote about it. Authors like Soranus, yes Soranus, suggested everything from plant-based pessaries to coitus interruptus. He even recommended timing sex to avoid pregnancy, a system that modern science has since confirmed is deeply unreliable. But it was knowledge, written, copied, shared, a glimmer of science in a world otherwise ruled by guesses and prayers. Fringe fact for you, some people believe the Romans invented an early version of the condom, not from animal intestines like later civilizations, but from linen soaked in various mixtures. Some were tied on, others inserted. Whether they worked, that's anyone's guess. The archaeological record is mostly silent on that point. Linen doesn't preserve well over 2,000 years, and here's your open debate. Did Roman men ever regularly use protection? Or was that idea mostly projected backward by modern historians looking for signs of civilization in all the wrong places? Some scholars argue men preferred natural methods, pulling out, herbal drinks, or nothing at all. Others think there was a small elite market for sheaths and infusions, probably among those who could afford midwives and scribes to keep track of cycles. You sigh and push off the wall. The lull is ending. The sun is lower now, angling across the floor in golden stripes. Time to start preparing for the evening wave. You adjust your tunic, rub a little more oil into your skin and step back inside. The cough comes again. You don't turn your head. The sunlight slants differently now, heavier and redder as it filters through the alleyways and slips between the uneven stones of the Lupanar's entrance. It's the signal all of you have been waiting for, the subtle shift from afternoon lethargy to early evening promise. This is when the day starts to stretch itself again, when the merchants are heading home, the soldiers are off duty, and the men who didn't dare sneak out earlier finally build up the courage. You can feel it in the energy of the place. Girls smoothing their tunics, reapplying pigment to their cheeks, adjusting the pins in their hair, with desperate hope that one good client might turn the whole day around, but instead of prepping for the next round, you're stuck in a debate. One of those never quite resolved conversations that's half about politics, half about identity, and entirely about the twisted concept of freedom in your line of work. The trigger this time is Nisa, who just finished with a merchant's son and came out glowing. He paid triple, gave her a fig cake, and told her she deserved better. Now she's ranting. "I'm not a slave," she says, pacing near the fountain. "I signed a contract. I can leave whenever I want. She says it loud enough for the girls in the back room to hear. They don't respond. Marcia chimes in from a low bench. "But you don't leave," she says, casually peeling a grape. "So how free are you, really?" The words hang in the air, sweet and sharp. Nysa glares. "I choose to stay. That's different." You're tempted to jump in, but you've had this exact conversation before, just with different names and slightly different bruises. You say nothing. The truth is messier than either of them will admit. Some of you are slaves, yes, owned outright, bought for pleasure and labour, no illusion of choice. Others, like you, are technically free, which mostly means your name isn't on someone else's property list, but your options are still boxed in by poverty, gender, and the invisible weight of social stain. You're stuck in a web spun by economics, not chains. Can you walk out the front door? Sure. Will you get a job in a respectable household afterward? Not a chance. The moment you work here, you're branded. Not with iron, maybe, but with reputation, which is harder to scrub off. You retreat from the debate before it turns sour. You head toward your room, dodging a drunk who's already taken off one sandal and is singing to himself in Greek. You pretend not to hear. The door frame of your room has fresh carvings on it. Someone has scratched a crude heart around the name Felicia, followed by what looks like the Latin abbreviation for good lay. You groan and mentally add it to the list of things you can't unsee. Inside, you sit on the edge of the pallet and stretch your legs out, rotating your ankles until the joints pop. Your feet ache. The soles are dirty. Your right sandal strap is frayed. You make a note to find a new pair before Saturnalia, or hope a generous client gets the hint. Maybe that banker who always compliments your calves. You've only been sitting a moment when there's a tap at the doorframe. Light, but deliberate. You look up and see a face you haven't seen in weeks. Tertius, the senatorial aide who always arrives robed, veiled, and fidgeting like a boy stealing sweets. He's clearly trying not to be recognised, even though you know his voice, his shape, even the way he breathes when nervous. "Felicia," he whispers, as if saying your name louder might invoke a curse. You nod, welcoming him in with a gesture. He hesitates before stepping inside, glancing behind him like someone might leap out from behind a pillar shouting, "Caught you!" You resist the urge to laugh. It's always the well-dressed ones who panic the most. He settles into the room like a man expecting divine retribution. You don't mock him. He's paid well in the past, and more importantly, tips in silver. He sits on the pallet, then stands up, then sits again. "Rough day?" you ask, keeping your voice smooth, light. He looks at you, eyes wide. "Senate meetings," he says, like it explains everything. You nod, you don't care, not really, but you've learned to ask the right questions. "Anyone argue about grain again?" He nods quickly, then shifts the topic like he's afraid even your plaster walls have ears. "I missed you," he says. You almost roll your eyes, almost. Instead, you smile faintly. "You say that to all the women?" "No," he insists, "not like this." You hum, non-committal. He's clearly here for more than just the usual. You prepare yourself to be his therapist, his confessional and his fantasy, all rolled into one. He pays for an hour, talks for half of it. You learn that his wife hates olives, his son recites Virgil badly, and he is terrified of public speaking. When he finally gets around to the actual reason he's here, he's tentative, unsure. You guide him through it like a priestess, careful and composed. When he leaves, he drops 5 silver denarii in your bowl, more than fair, and disappears into the dusk like a shadow trying not to exist. You sigh, counting the coins with a mixture of relief and mild irritation. It's a good haul, but emotionally exhausting. Still, it beats the man who tried to pay you in bread crusts and a half-dead chicken last week. You step into the hallway just as another argument starts, Marcia and Nysa again, this time about who qualifies for burial in a public cemetery. You walk past them, tuning it out. You have your own thoughts swirling, about Tertius, about that corner room cough, about your fraying sandals and whether 5 denarii is enough to buy a new pair and pay the vigils. You're too tired to do the math right now. Now for the historical drop. In ancient Rome, the line between free and enslaved prostitutes was as blurred as it was brutal. While it's true that many sex workers were slaves or freed women under contract, some freeborn women voluntarily took up the trade, usually out of desperation, not desire. Those who registered with the state as meretresses gave up their right to marry respectable Roman men. That's right, once you signed on, you couldn't legally become a wife to a citizen. Even if you got out, even if you found love, even if you were the most virtuous harlot this side of the Tiber. One signature, and your social ceiling was slammed shut. And the fringe detail tonight? There's scattered evidence that some sex workers faked their status. A few pretended to be registered meritresses to avoid being charged with adultery, which was a serious crime. Think about that. Some women found more safety under the label prostitute than unfaithful wife. Rome's legal system had a sense of humour, a dark one. As for what historians still argue over, the exact status of contracted prostitutes. Some worked under lanones with formal arrangements, profit-sharing, housing, even a clothing stipends. But was that freedom? Or just a slower kind of bondage? The debate continues, with dusty scrolls and worn Latin phrases passed around like puzzle pieces no one can quite fit together. Back in your room, you tuck the silver under your mattress and lie back on the worn straw, trying not to think about how much longer until dark. The busiest hours are coming. You can feel it. For now, you rest your eyes, breathe deep, and wait for the next knock. As the evening settles across Pompeii, the streets take on a new flavour. More wine, more noise, more risk. The sky turns a bruised orange, and shadows crawl longer between the buildings, stretching into the alleys like fingers feeling for something they lost. You lean against the doorway of your room, half in the dark, watching men drift past the Lupanar's threshold with the hungry look of wolves circling a sheep pen. They try to appear casual, of course, adjusting tunics, pretending to examine wall frescoes, laughing too loudly about things that aren't funny. But they're here for you, for your co-workers, for the illusion of being wanted, just long enough to forget who they really are. You don't call out to them. You haven't done that in months. Some of the newer girls still do, but they haven't figured out yet that desperation is like perfume to these men. It attracts the wrong kind, the ones who want power more than pleasure. You've learnt to wait, to make them come to you. They always do. You shift your weight, feeling the rough edge of a carved name beneath your fingertips on the stone archway. It's yours, or at least the name you work under. Felicia. It's been etched in at least 4 different spots now, each with a slightly different spelling. One has a heart beside it. Another reads Felicia bene fellet. Felicia gives good... well, you get the idea. You used to get offended. Now it just means you're recognisable. Repeat business, brand loyalty, as Brynja puts it with a dry smirk. Graffiti is everywhere in this place. The walls of the Lupanar aren't just decorated, they're alive, scratched, painted, gouged with thoughts and crude poetry by men who either couldn't afford a mosaic or thought poetry was a better tip than coin. You've read most of them, mostly out of boredom. Some praise the girls by name. Marcia is a goddess, some are threats. Nysa stole my coin, beware. One simply reads, I came, I paid, I came again. You've seen that one so many times, you wonder if it's just a default message for the creatively bankrupt. It's not just clients leaving their marks. Some girls scratch in tallies near their doors, personal ledgers of who came and who paid. You've got your own little system hidden under the plaster near your headboard. A series of marks, 1 for each night no one cried, 2 for when you got a full meal, 3 for every time someone treated you like a person. That last one doesn't get many. You wander down the hallway, passing rooms with open doors, half lit by oil lamps set into alcoves. Merope's voice floats out of one, sharp and nasal, cackling at some joke you missed. In another room, a client is already asleep, snoring through his beard, while a girl frowns and counts the coins he dropped on the floor. The torchlight flickers across the walls, catching the scenes painted above each door. You've memorized them all. A woman riding a man like a chariot. A trio arranged in a complicated knot of limbs. One that seems anatomically impossible unless gravity worked differently in ancient Rome. The images aren't just decoration, they're advertising. Menu items. Each one is supposed to match the specialty of the room or the girl assigned to it. Yours shows a woman on her knees, face tilted coyly up. It was repainted last year, right after you caught the eye of a shipping agent who left you 3 whole denarii and half a bottle of imported oil. A gift. You still have it. That bottle might be the nicest thing you own. In the corner of the common room, Brynja is muttering over a wax tablet. She glances up and sees you. Someone carved your name again, she says, jerking a thumb toward the wall. Top left, near the fresco with the goat. You nod. That's the 4th this week, Afui. She gives you a tired look. Maybe you should charge more. Maybe you should get me a new door, you say. She snorts and returns to her tallying. You perch on a low stool beside her and watch as another man enters the Lupanar. Middle-aged, clean tunic, new sandals. Probably a merchant. You can always tell by the shoes. He pauses, scanning the space. His eyes flick from girl to girl, then land on you. He walks over slowly, like a man pretending he's in no rush to sin. "You, Felicia?" he asks, in a tone that suggests he's heard stories. You nod. "Depends," you say. "Are you paying in coin or poetry?" He laughs, thankfully not the creepy kind. "Coin," he says, holding up a purse. He's decent. Not too rough, not too fast, and he actually makes conversation before pulling up his tunic. He asks how long you've worked here. You lie. He asks if you like it. You lie again. He asks if anyone's ever fallen in love with you. You hesitate, then smile. "Only the ones who say they won't," you reply. That makes him quiet. Later, when he leaves, he brushes your hand like he might say something profound. But he doesn't. He just nods and disappears into the night like the rest of them. Graffiti, names, marks, these are your legacy. Not children, not stories, not even a real grave when the time comes. Just scratches in stone and fading pigment on plaster. You used to think you'd leave more behind. Now you hope the walls remember you better than the people do. Historical fact of the hour: Pompeii's Lupanar, the most famous Roman brothel ever uncovered, had over 120 pieces of graffiti preserved in its walls when it was excavated. Many included names, both of workers and clients, along with reviews, crude jokes, and anatomical commentary. These inscriptions are among the only surviving records of ancient sex workers' voices. Even if many of them weren't written by the women themselves, still they speak. Here's your fringe tidbit. Some of these inscriptions contain spelling errors and vulgar slang that suggest they were written by the semi-literate. One man wrote the Latin equivalent of "Suxwell, ask for Lupa," and signed it Big Marcus. He even drew a tiny penis next to his name. That, in some way, is the most honest advertisement you'll ever read. And the scholarly debate: whether these names carved into brothel walls were real or stage names. Professional aliases chosen for style, protection, or simply to sound more appealing. Felicia might be you, or it might have been a dozen girls before you. It might be the name the Lino gave you, or one you chose because it sounded luckier than what your mother called you. Some historians think names were recycled like costumes. Others think each girl carved her own identity into the walls letter by letter. You reach up and touch your own name on the doorframe, the one with the lopsided heart. You trace the letters, then step away. A client's approaching. Time to earn another mark. By now, night is easing into the city like ink soaking through parchment. Slow, inevitable, and just a little too quiet. The light in the Lupanar turns golden and low, filtered through oil lamps that flicker against the sweating walls. This is the hour when everything begins to shift. The early drunks start to slur their way home, the forum quiets down, and the shadows in the hallway get longer. It's also when the other kind of client starts showing up. Not the labourers or the wine sellers or the cocky teenagers trying to prove something. No, now come the men who don't want to be seen. The ones who speak in whispers, wear cloaks with the deep hoods, and drop coins without making eye contact. You know the type, and right now one of them is standing at your door. You recognise the gate before the face because the face is mostly hidden. It's the senator, or at least a senator's son. He never gives a name, and honestly, you don't care. What you care about is that he always pays in gold and smells like expensive bath oil. Not the citrus kind everyone else wears either. This stuff smells like cinnamon and resin, rare imports that come on ships with sails made of dyed wool. His presence in your doorway is a little miracle, the kind that might get you 2 days off or a new pair of shoes. He steps inside like he's sneaking into a temple he's not allowed in. "Felicia," he says, and you almost laugh, the way he says it, like it's a title, not a name. He takes his cloak off carefully and folds it into a neat square on your only stool. Underneath he's wearing a clean tunic, white, minimal, expensive. Everything about him screams power wrapped in guilt. You know the routine. He likes control, he likes silence. He likes to feel like he's in a place where none of the rules apply. And for the right coin, you're happy to provide that illusion. You guide him through his usual script. He touches your face like he's memorizing it. You let him. You ask no questions. He likes that, the quiet. You wonder what kind of life he must live to come here for silence. Most men come for noise, the moaning, the compliments, the fake little gasps. But not him. He wants you still. Wants to pretend you're a statue come to life. You're good at this part. You've practiced stillness better than any temple priestess. When he's done, he doesn't speak for a while. Just sits, hands folded, staring at the flickering oil lamp like it's the only thing keeping him tethered to the ground. Finally, he reaches into a pouch and drops a small bag of coins on the edge of the bed. You hear the soft clink of gold. Not bronze, not silver. Gold. Your stomach flips. He stands and adjusts his cloak, careful again not to meet your gaze. "Thank you," he says softly. Like you just saved his life. And then he's gone. You sit there for a moment, stunned, before opening the bag. 3 aurei. You blink. That's more than you make in a month. You don't move for a while, just stare at the coins like they might turn to dust if you blink too hard. Eventually, you hide them, deep under the loose stone in your floor, the one behind the straw mat. You've never had this much to hide before. You tell no one, not even Brynja. The brothel is quieter now. The main rush has passed. Girls lounge in the common room, sipping watered wine and watching the door with tired eyes. You pass by Nysa, who's draped across a bench like a goddess in decline. "That cloaked one again?" she asks, tilting her head. You nod. She whistles. "Careful, men like that start soft and end messy." You know she's right, but right now you're thinking about what those 3 aurei could mean. A week away from here, new clothes, a bath that doesn't smell like 10 other people's sweat. Maybe, just maybe, a step closer to buying your name back. You step outside briefly into the alley behind the Lupanar. The air is thick and warm, but at least it doesn't reek of wine and desperation. You lean against the wall, staring at the stars just beginning to show through the purple-black sky. Rome is above you. Somewhere far away, the Palatine Hill is glowing with torchlight. Senators are lounging in atriums, slaves are fanning nobles with peacock feathers, and no one is thinking about you, unless they're sneaking into back rooms like your senator. You think about what your name really is. Not the work name, not Felicia, but the one you were given as a girl. You haven't said it aloud in years. You try it under your breath just once. It feels strange in your mouth. Foreign. Like a word from a language you forgot. You wonder if you'll ever use it again. If someone will ever call it without shame. Probably not here. The sound of footsteps breaks your thoughts. A new group is approaching the brothel entrance, loud, already laughing, wine on their breath. You sigh and slip back inside. Brynja eyes you as you enter. "Take the fancy one next time," she says. "He's probably got friends." You nod absently, but your mind is still on those coins in the floor, and what they mean. Historical drop for tonight. Despite all its political chaos, Rome was an empire obsessed with hierarchy. Even in brothels, this obsession played out in strange ways. Clients from the elite classes often sought out the grimiest, most anonymous places, like the Lupanar, not in spite of the shame, but because of it. There was a thrill in slumming it. The worse the surroundings, the more dangerous the fantasy. It wasn't about the women. It was about power. And paradoxically, they treated you better when pretending you didn't exist. Here's your strange but true detail. Roman senators weren't technically supposed to engage in prostitution, not as clients, and definitely not as prostitutes. Doing so could stain their dignitas, a kind of public reputation that was as valuable as gold. But plenty did anyway, under cloaks and assumed names, sometimes even building secret apartments for their favourite girls. One legend tells of a consul who kept a prostitute hidden in his villa, passing her off as a relative. No one asks questions, no one ever does. And the academic shrug, whether there were high-end prostitutes working in brothels like yours, or if those women operated entirely outside places like the Lupanar. Some scholars argue that elite courtesans, or scorte delicati, worked independently in private homes or rented apartments. Others suggest the lines blurred often, with wealthier clients crossing into public brothels and elevating certain girls, if only temporarily. You're not a delicata. Not yet. But 3 gold coins in your floor says maybe, just maybe, you could fake it if you had to. Back in your room, you rebraid your hair, sweep the floor with your foot and adjust your shift. The night isn't over yet. There's another knock at your door. You smile. The door creaks open again, and for a second you brace yourself for someone sloppy, drunk, boisterous, maybe already bleeding from a tavern brawl. But the man who steps in is quiet, slim, hesitant. His robe is deep blue and frayed at the hem, which tells you a few things: decent class, no real wealth. Likely from a family that used to have money and lost it betting on the wrong faction. His sandals are dusty, the leather cracking. He doesn't meet your eye at first, but when he finally does, there's a flicker of something. Not hunger, not lust. Sadness, maybe. That kind you learn to recognise after enough time in this room. It's the look of a man who doesn't want to be here but didn't know where else to go. You nod toward the bench and close the door behind him. "What's your name?" you ask gently. He hesitates, then shakes his head. Doesn't matter. Classic. You try again. First time? That gets a tiny pained smile. "No, just the first time I've come here." You take that in. It means he's gone to others, places less known, maybe cleaner, maybe more secret, or maybe just brothels with softer lighting. But the Lupanar's cheap, and that draws a specific crowd. It's where men go when they've run out of illusions. He sits with his hands clasped tightly in his lap. You don't have to talk, you offer, and for a moment it looks like he'll take you up on it. But then, softly, he says, "Do you ever get anyone like me?" You raise an eyebrow. "Like you how?" He pauses. Nervous, guilty, not here for sport. You sit beside him, not touching. "More than you think," you say. "Most of them just don't say it out loud." You wait. He doesn't move. His whole body is tense, like he's wound too tight and might snap with the wrong word. "My father's a magistrate," he finally says, voice barely above a whisper. "He'd die if he knew." You snort softly. "No, he wouldn't. He's probably got a favourite girl on the Aventine." That actually earns you a laugh, short and sharp. "I came here because I thought it wouldn't feel like a sin if I paid for it." You shrug. Probably still does. He finally meets your eyes again. "Do you hate us?" You blink. "Men?" "No," he says. "The ones who come here." That's a harder question. You tilt your head, considering. "I hate the ones who lie, who think I'm just a body with no eyes, no ears, who treat me like something they scraped off their sandal, then pretend to love me in the same breath." You pause. "But the ones like you? The ones who know they're broken and came here anyway? No, I don't hate you." He nods, then leans in, not lustfully, just like he needs contact. You let him put his head against your shoulder. It's not the strangest thing a client has asked of you, not by a long shot. He stays like that for a while, quiet, breathing shallowly. When he finally pulls back, he looks steadier. "Thank you," he says, reaching for his purse. "Keep it," you murmur. "You didn't take anything from me." He still leaves 3 coins on the bench before slipping away. You sit there for a while after he's gone, feeling the shape of his weight against your arm. Not many clients ever give you space to feel anything. Fewer still leave behind something more than sweat and awkwardness. You consider lighting incense, but you don't want to ruin the quiet that's settled in the room like a silk shawl. You step into the hall and almost crash into Brynja. She looks at you with narrowed eyes. "He cry?" "No," you reply. "Almost." "Did he pay?" "Yes." "Then I don't care," she mutters and heads for her room. You drift back toward the atrium and hear laughter, drunken, sharp, the kind that's less about the humour and more about showing off. A new group's arrived. You know the rhythm of these ones before they speak. Wealthy enough to act bold, entitled enough to expect a performance, the kind that treats you like part of the furniture, or worse, like a prize to pass around. You brace yourself. The loudest one, a balding man with rings on every finger, saunters in and calls out, "Where's the girl with the thighs like marble? They said she's in here." That could be any of you. You watch as he scans the room, pointing at girls like he's picking livestock. He settles on Merope, who sighs and stands like she's been called to the execution block. "Wish me luck," she murmurs, deadpan. "Maybe he'll pass out halfway through." You take a spot on the bench near the entrance, quietly counting your coins from the senator and the nervous young man. It's more than you've had in weeks. Enough to keep back, enough to hide, enough to start thinking in terms of the future again, which is dangerous, because thinking about the future is how hope sneaks in, and hope is sharp. A younger man enters next, handsome, clearly rich, clearly trying not to be obvious about it. He doesn't wear a hood, doesn't keep his face down. He acts like he's above this place, but comes here anyway, which makes him the most dangerous kind. You're watching him make a beeline for one of the younger girls, Licinia, probably not even 17 yet, when Brynja intercepts him like a soldier defending a gate. "She's not available," she says firmly. He frowns, confused. "But I saw her yesterday." "She's sick," Brynja lies. "You can wait, or pick someone else." He chooses to wait. You wonder, briefly, how many times Brynja's had to block men like that. Protect the younger ones from clients who think youth equals pliability. You wonder how many times someone did that for her. years ago. There's a whisper of movement near the back wall, and you notice someone else has entered. Someone you hadn't seen in weeks. She's small with a limp, her face partially hidden under a scarf. The other girls don't react. She's not working. She's begging. She used to be one of you. Tia, maybe? Oh, Leah. You think she left after a fever nearly killed her. You don't say anything as she slips into the shadows and makes her way toward the back rooms. No one stops her. This place doesn't turn away its ghosts. Tonight's historical fact. Roman prostitutes occupied a uniquely paradoxical position. Completely legal, yet almost entirely unprotected. You had to register, pay taxes, and were even subject to specific dress codes, often required to wear a toga instead of a stola, marking you as available. But legal didn't mean safe. You could still be assaulted, cheated, and left to die, and no one would be held accountable. Unless, of course, your client was famous enough to make a scandal out of it. Fringe detail, there's evidence, scattered and debated, that certain brothels employed doormen or custodies to screen clients, especially those known for violence. You've never had one here, just Brynja. Honestly, she's probably better. And the open scholarly debate, whether elite Roman women ever visited brothels, not as workers, but as clients. There are a few passing mentions in texts that suggest it. Maybe it was rare, maybe it was coded language, maybe it never happened at all. But the image of a veiled noblewoman slipping into a lupanar at night, looking for something her husband couldn't or wouldn't give her, that lingers in your mind longer than it should. You watch the room for a moment longer, then slip back into your quarters. You lie on your side, the coins warm beneath your fingers, and breathe deep. You're not done for the night, but for a few minutes, you can pretend it's over. Dinner isn't so much a meal as it is survival. A handful of olives, a heel of stale bread, and a watered-down cup of wine that tastes like sour grapes and warm metal. You sit on the cool tile floor near the back wall with a few of the other girls, legs tucked under your tunic, chewing slowly and pretending this counts as rest. The energy in the Lupanar has dipped into its second wind. Quieter, but heavier. You can feel it in the air like a storm coming. The clients are fewer now, but stranger, bolder. They come in groups sometimes, laughing and red-faced, tossing coins like they're trying to impress the ghosts of Bacchus himself. Other times they come alone, eyes down, cloaked in wine and shame. You nibble at a too-hard fig and listen to the gossip swirl around you like smoke. Marcia is talking about a priestess who visited earlier, cloaked, veiled, and smelling like frankincense and authority. Supposedly, she asked for Brynja by name, and the two of them were locked away in a back room for over an hour. She didn't even undress, Marcia says, eyes wide, just wanted to talk. You snort. That's never just talking. Brynja won't say a word, adds Nisa, and you know what that means. You do. It means it was real. Brynja only keeps quiet when something important happens. You glance toward her door, which is shut now with a fresh smear of red paint over the lintel. Something protective, symbolic. Priests and priestesses are complicated creatures. They are not forbidden from visiting brothels, but it's taboo. Sacred and profane aren't supposed to mix, at least not publicly. And yet, they always do. It's Rome. That line is so thin it practically vibrates. You've had religious visitors before. A priest of Mercury once asked you to bless a coin before he used it to gamble. Another claimed he could read your future and your birthmarks. You let him try, mostly because he brought dates and dried fish. They are just men, like the others, except more wrapped up in rituals and guilt, which honestly makes them easier to manipulate. Give them the right phrase, the right perfume, a touch on the wrist at the right moment, and they'll think the gods themselves sent you. Still, something about this priestess lingers in your mind. A woman veiled, with power and privacy. A woman with coin and secrets. She didn't need to come here, which means she wanted to. You wonder what she said to Brynja. You wonder if it was a warning or an offer. You're pulled from your thoughts by a loud thunk. Someone slamming a jug down on the central table. A client is arguing with Merope. Again. You don't even have to look. His voice is slurred, full of fake anger. "She said I could come back," he shouts. "You're not her fa," Merope snaps back. "You left without paying last time, remember?" He lurches forward. Two of the girls stand. You stay seated, but your hand curls into a fist under your tunic. Brynja appears out of nowhere, steps between them and growls, "Either pay or leave. You've got 5 seconds to decide." The man blinks, confused, then stumbles out. Merope spits on the floor behind him. That's 3 this week, she mutters, wiping her mouth. We need a damn bouncer. You shake your head. We have Brynna. She's old. She's a weapon. Merope grins. Yeah. Well, even weapons wear out. You don't say what you're thinking, that so do the rest of you. Once the tension breaks, things return to a dull normal. The room breathes again. You finish your wine and stretch your legs, joints cracking like dry wood. You've got another hour, maybe 2, before the final wave. The real late-night crowd. The ones who've had too much wine and not enough affection. They'll be louder, rougher, and more generous if you flatter their egos enough. You close your eyes and prepare the face you'll wear for them. Not seductive, not innocent. Just open enough to catch their attention and closed enough to keep yourself intact. You remember something your mother once said before everything fell apart. Never show a man your real face unless he's earned it. You followed that rule religiously. Most of the men you meet wouldn't recognise you in the street the next day, even if you waved. That's by design. You've built a persona out of fragments, part goddess, part ghost, part joke they won't remember. It works. The temple bells ring faintly in the distance, marking the 8th hour. Darkness now fully wraps around the Lupanar. Oil lamps are being trimmed, fresh wicks by you placed. You light the small one in your room, watching the flame dance in the reflection of your bronze mirror. You look tired, but not broken. You can work with that. You walk to the back room for a touch of perfume. Someone left a bottle open and you dab a drop behind each ear. You catch a glimpse of Nisa doing the same and wink at her. Trying to steal my clients? Just making sure I don't smell like fear. You grin. Smart. There's a quiet knock on the main door. Not forceful, not hurried, just deliberate. That's unusual. You peek into the hallway and see Brynna unlocking the door. A man steps inside, tall and lean, with grey in his beard and a staff in one hand. Not a beggar, not a senator, nothing in between. His eyes scan the room like he's been here before but forgot the shape of it. He says something to Brynna, softly. She nods, points toward your room. You're already on your feet before she says your name. This one's not drunk, not shy, not dangerous. You can feel it. He's got the look of someone who's not here for pleasure, or at least not just that. There's a story behind those eyes. You lead him into your room, close the curtain behind you and wait for him to speak, but he doesn't. He just looks around for a long moment, then sits, hands folded in his lap. Finally, he says, I used to know someone like you, long ago. You tilt your head. What happened to her? He hesitates. She vanished. Or I did. I can't tell anymore. Looks at you like you might be her. Like time forgot to warn him you wouldn't be. You don't ask for details. You just sit beside him, matching his silence. He doesn't touch you. Not right away. And when he finally does, it's gentle. Like memory. Like apology. You let him. Tonight's historical footnote? The cult of Venus, goddess of love, beauty and sex, was one of the few places Roman prostitutes could find a kind of spiritual refuge. Some brothels even had shrines to her. Offerings were made, candles were lit, not just by workers, but by clients seeking fertility or forgiveness. You've lit a few yourself, some for luck, some for silence, some for the girls who never came back. Fringe detail. In some cases, high-ranking priestesses of Venus weren't just tolerated, they were honoured. There's speculation that certain temples even employed sacred prostitutes, though the evidence is debated. Still, the boundary between divine and profane wasn't always clean, especially when it came to women's bodies. And the scholarly debate? Whether visiting a prostitute was seen as religious relief or moral decay. Some philosophers, Seneca for example, argued that brothels served a social function, preventing greater evils by offering a release valve. Others called them the rot at the heart of Rome. The truth? Both perspectives probably sat side by side in the same forums, argued by men who visited brothels between sessions. Back in your room, the man eventually stands, smooths his tunic and bows. Not a grand gesture, just enough to make you blink. Thank you, he says, and somehow it sounds different tonight. You sit alone for a while after he leaves, watching the flame in your lamp burn low. You consider snuffing it out, but not yet. Not just yet. You wake up with the scent of incense still curling in your nostrils and the ache of too many footsteps in your hips. The room is dim, the lamp long snuffed. The hallway outside quiet but restless. You must have dozed off between clients. It happens sometimes, especially on nights that stretch too long and blur into each other like watercolours left out in the rain. You sit up slowly, blinking as you'd adjust to the soft light coming in through the tiny slit of a window high on the far wall. It's the hour before dawn. Your body knows it even if no clock does. That uncanny stillness before the city stirs again, before the carts roll and the dogs bark and the fishmongers yell like town criers for crustaceans. You rub your eyes and swing your legs over the side of the straw mattress. Your feet hit cool stone. You glance at your coin pouch, still tucked safely in the shadowed crack beneath the loose tile. You don't count it. Not now. The weight is comfort enough. You stretch, arms overhead, spine cracking like old pottery. You wonder if Venus hears the prayers of women like you at this hour. You wonder if she ever answers them. You shuffle into the hall looking for water, or at least someone coherent enough to share a moment of peace with. Instead, you find something unexpected. A woman, middle-aged, wrapped in a heavy woolen stola, standing at the entry like she's lost and too proud to admit it. She's not a prostitute. That's immediately clear. She's clean, well-fed, and trying not to touch the walls with her gloved hands. But she's not a client either. Women don't come here for pleasure, not openly. You meet her eyes. They're dark, lined with coal, and wide with something between fear and resolve. "Are you the one called Felicia?" she asks. Her voice is sharp. Not cruel, but clipped, like someone used to being obeyed. You nod, cautious. She steps closer, tugging her veil tighter. "I need a favour," she says. You say nothing. That's the safest answer. "My husband..." She stops, swallows, looks around to make sure no one is listening. "He prefers women like you. I want to understand why." You blink. Not the question you expected. She sees your expression and straightens her spine. "I'm not here to judge," she says, "or to beg. I want to know what I'm doing wrong." You lean against the wall, folding your arms. "Why come here to ask?" A mouth that twists. "Because this is where he goes. Week after week. I followed him once, watched him walk through your door like it was a temple." She pauses. "Do you love him?" you ask. That throws her. She looks down. "I don't know, but I hate not understanding." You motion toward your room. She hesitates, then steps inside like she's crossing into another world. You sit across from her on the pallet. She remains standing, rigid, hands folded like she's afraid of catching shame through the air. You study her, the earrings, modest but real gold, the rings on both hands, the faint perfume of myrtle and lemon oil. A woman of some standing, she's used to being seen. Not like this, though. "I'm not going to give you advice on how to seduce your husband," you say softly. "That's not what I do." She nods. "Then tell me what you do. You pause. "I make men feel seen, just long enough to forget who they're pretending to be." You let that sit. She lowers herself to the stool, fingers trembling slightly. "Does it work?" she asks. "Most of the time." "They fall in love?" You shake your head. "They fall in want. Love is something different." She's quiet, studying the frayed edges of your blanket. "What does he ask for?" she whispers. "What does he need that I don't give him?" You exhale. "It's not about you, it's about what he can't say to you, what he's not allowed to want. This place, this room, me, I'm permission, your rules." The silence after that is thick. Not angry, just heavy. Like truth dropped in the middle of a still pool. Eventually she stands. Her face has gone blank in that noblewoman way. Walls rebuilding in real time. She smooths her veil and says, "Thank you," in a voice that doesn't sound thankful. You nod, and she leaves without looking back. Outside, the sky is paling to grey-blue. Birds are beginning to stir on the rooftops, fluttering in the eaves. You sit for a long moment, watching the space where she stood, wondering what she'll do with what you gave her. You're not sure it was kindness, yes. Not sure it was anything but honesty. You step outside into the main room and find Brynja rubbing oil into her elbows with practiced movements. She glances at you. You get another client? Something like that. Was she rich? Probably. Did she cry? Almost. Brynja nods like that makes sense. They usually do when they realise we know their husbands better than they do. You wander to the front step, where the light is just beginning to hit the stone street. A fruit seller is already setting up his cart. A cart creaks by, wheels bouncing on uneven paving. It smells like smoke and wet fabric. You sit down with your back against the warm stone and breathe. You're tired but awake, hollowed out but not broken. Not yet. Here's your historical breadcrumb. Roman society had specific legal categories for women, and the matrona, a respectable married woman, was held to rigid standards of behaviour. Visiting a brothel was unthinkable. Even being seen speaking too comfortably with men in public could start a whisper campaign. Yet some did come, veiled, anonymous, quiet, for information, for favours, for revenge, and perhaps sometimes for connection. Your odd fact for this hour: some Roman wives sent their slaves to spy on their husbands at brothels. Others consulted fortune-tellers, augurs, or dream interpreters to divine the cause of their husbands' wandering affections. A few took it a step further and hired prostitutes themselves. Whether to learn, compete, or retaliate is anyone's guess. And the ongoing scholarly shrug? Whether brothels like the Lupanar ever became informal advice centres for upper-class women? It sounds absurd, but there are fragments of letters, satire, and graffiti that suggest a handful of noble women formed relationships, sometimes friendships, with working girls. Was it common? Probably not, but in Rome nothing is ever entirely forbidden, just expensive. You shift on the stone step, watching the sun begin to push away the shadows. Another day begins. The city awakens with the same hunger it always does. And you? You pull your shawl tighter and go back inside. The floor needs sweeping, the oil needs refilling. There's still work to do. You've barely stepped back inside when the smell hits you. Sweet, sharp and earthy. Someone's lit incense. Not the cheap kind the Leno uses to mask the scent of sweat and spilled wine, but something richer, almost ceremonial. Frankincense maybe, or myrrh. That's not normal. You follow the scent to the small shrine tucked in the corner of the atrium. A little alcove where the girls make offerings when they're desperate, lucky, or both. The shrine is older than the building itself, dedicated to Venus, of course, and to Priapus, that grinning, wide-eyed god with the oversized anatomy and unblinking gaze. His carved figure leans in the corner beside a soot-darkened wall, red-painted phallus still glossy from years of girls rubbing it for luck. Today, someone's gone all out. Fresh rose petals scattered on the ledge, a tiny clay cup filled with wine, 2 figs placed beside a lit taper. You glance around and spot Marcia near the basin, her eyes red but her chin held high. She sees you looking and shrugs. I thought it couldn't hurt. You nod. Everyone understands what she means. Her belly isn't showing yet, but it will be soon. She's not pretending anymore. She's asking for a miracle, or a midwife, or maybe just a few weeks of peace. You walk over, pluck one of the petals from the ledge, and roll it between your fingers. You think Venus cares about girls like us? You ask. Marcia laughs, bitter but not mean. If she doesn't, we're all in the wrong profession. Fair enough. You drop the petal onto the offering dish and whisper a prayer. You don't even know what you're asking for anymore. Maybe just that today isn't worse than yesterday. The thing about Venus is that she isn't a goddess of comfort. She's a goddess of want. And that's what this business runs on. Not love, not need. Want. It's what makes men hand over coins they can't afford. It's what brings senators into rooms that stink of mould and sweat. And it's what keeps you coming back, hoping each time for a little less pain, a little more dignity, and, on the rarest days, maybe even kindness. A shout echoes from the front room. You both look up. Merope appears in the doorway, waving a scrap of cloth like a victory banner. "Guess who finally paid up?" she crows, holding a coin pouch. "Took 2 threats and a broken stool, but he came through." You and Marcia exchange a look. Merope is your patron saint of persistence. If someone owes her money, she'll either get it or make sure they wish they were dead. As the girls gather around her to hear the story, something about a sailor who claimed he lost his coin pouch in the bath, you step back toward your room. On the way, you pass the frescoes again. The colours are fading. You've stared at them so many times you've memorised every angle, every posture, every exaggerated smile. You used to find them ridiculous. Now, they're more like a checklist. In your room, you relight your lamp, take a clean cloth and wipe down the small wooden chest beside your bed. It's where you keep your extras, a worn-out comb, your last bit of eyeliner, and a tiny pouch of black salt Brynnia gave you for protection. She swears it wards off the evil eye. You don't believe it, but you haven't taken it out of the pouch either. You fish through your belongings until you find the dried laurel's leaf you tucked away weeks ago. Still brittle, still whole, you slide it into the crack behind the bedpost. where it joins a growing collection of tiny nothings. Scraps of silk, a broken ring, a bead from a client's necklace. You're not sure why you keep them. Maybe they're anchors. Maybe you just don't like letting things vanish without a trace. A soft knock at your doorway breaks your thoughts. It's the new girl, Julia, you think, hovering like a sparrow caught indoors. She's got that wide-eyed look again, the one that says she hasn't yet accepted this place as permanent. "Can I talk?" she asks. You nod, gesturing for her to come in. She perches on the edge of the stool, fingers twisting in her lap. "Is it always like this?" she asks. The noise, the smell, the way they don't look at you after. You exhale. "No," you say. "Sometimes they look too long." She frowns. "I thought it'd be easier after the first time, but it's not." You nod slowly. It gets easier to fake. That's not the same thing. She looks at you like she wants to cry, but her eyes are dry. "Do you remember your first?" she asks. You do. Too well. You were younger than Julia. The man was older, polite, and tried too hard to be gentle, which somehow made it worse. You remember the way he touched your face afterward and said, "You're going to be very popular." You didn't speak for the rest of the night. Brynja sat with you, didn't say anything, just sat. "Yeah," you finally say. "I remember." Julia wraps her arms around her knees. "What if I can't do it?" "Then you don't," you reply. You take what coin you've made and vanish before the Leno figures it out. She shakes her head. "I don't have anywhere to go." "Neither did I," you say. "Still don't. But I'm still here." She leaves a few minutes later, face blank. You hope she either gets used to this life or finds a way out fast. Getting stuck in between, that's the worst fate. It's like trying to breathe in syrup. You lie back down, not to sleep, but to close your eyes and drift for a while. You listen to the murmur of voices through the thin walls. Someone laughs, someone else sobs. You hear the rustle of cloth, the creak of a mattress, the hiss of wine being poured into a cracked cup. It's a lullaby you've heard 1,000 times, and you still can't decide if it's comforting or unbearable. Your history dropped for this section. The cult of Priapus, often paired with Venus in brothel shrines, was as vulgar as it was devotional. Priapus was the protector of gardens, fertility, and, less glamorously, boundary stones. His statues were placed at entrances, not just for blessings, but to warn off thieves and bad luck. In brothels, he served as both joke and guardian, a reminder of what you sold and who you prayed wouldn't ruin you. Fringe detail: some shrines had curses carved into the base, warnings to those who dared harm the women inside. "May his member wither," one reads, "if he leaves without paying." You always liked that one. And the scholarly dispute, whether these shrines were truly spiritual or just superstitious theatre. Were they expressions of faith, or tools of comfort, in a world that offered you none? No one agrees. Some think the offerings were just habit, like knocking wood. Others argue they were lifelines. A way to feel seen by something, anything, even a grinning stone god with an oversized phallus. You roll over, pressing your cheek into the woven cloth of your pillow. The incense has faded now, but the hope it brought lingers a little longer. The heat doesn't break. Even deep in the night, the Lupanar holds onto the warmth like a fever dream. The walls sweat with you. The stone floor sticks to bare feet. The air is too thick to move through without feeling it curl inside your lungs. You sit on your mattress, fan yourself lazily with a strip of parchment someone abandoned, and listen to the muted clatter of a dispute echoing through the hallway. It's not loud enough to get involved yet, but it's coming to a boil. You can hear it in the pitch. 2 women, sharp words slicing at each other, punctuated by the deeper rumble of a man trying to mediate and failing miserably. And then someone shouts your name, not the soft, seductive Felicia that gets whispered in doorways. This is a bark. "Get in here!" It's Brynja. You groan, dragging yourself up and out into the corridor like someone reporting for military duty. The scene is just outside Meripé's room. She's standing nose to nose with Nysa, both girls red-faced and furious. Between them stands a client, wide-eyed, shirtless, and clutching his sandals like he regrets every life decision he's ever made. "She stole him," Nysa spits, arms crossed tight enough to squeeze blood from stone. "He asked for me, and she dragged him into her room." "I offered him a discount," Meripé fires back, smiling through her teeth. "Which is not against the rules," Nysa turns to Brynja. "She undercut me." "That's against every rule." Brina sighs, pinching the bridge of her nose. Felicia, she says, gesturing. You're neutral. What do we do?
Artemis.
You rub your temples, aware that every second you spend playing brothel judge is a second you're not sleeping or earning. Let me talk to the client, you mutter. The man blinks at you, sweaty and caught in the middle like a lamb between two hungry dogs. Who did you ask for? You ask gently. I thought Niza, he says, then flinches as Merope scoffs. But she said she'd do it for half. You nod. Okay, next time pick a room and stick with it. He nods like a child being scolded for stealing figs. You look back at the girls. He's not worth it, you say. If you're fighting over clients who pay half, you're both losing. That seems to deflate them more than anything else. Brynja gives you a nod, satisfied, and shoos them off in opposite directions. The client gets pushed into Merope's room, still clutching his sandals like they might save him. You return to your own space, dragging a stool in front of the door just to keep people from barging in again. Not that it'll stop them. Privacy here is a suggestion, not a law. You sit back down and stare at the small bronze mirror, tilting it until it catches the lamp's flickering glow. Your reflection looks tired. Not set, just used. Like furniture that's seen too many years and too few repairs. This job is full of rivalries. You're not surprised. When every coin matters and every man might be your next meal ticket, the women here can turn on each other fast. Some are friends until one of them gets offered an extra denarius. Others don't bother pretending to get along at all. You've managed to stay neutral mostly by staying useful. You patch tunics, you remember names, you say the right thing at the right time. People like having you around, even if they'd never say it. But even you have your limits. There are days when you want to scream, days when someone takes your comb or borrows your oil and never returns it. Days when a client leaves bruises and Brina shrugs and says, "That's the business." You haven't lost your temper yet, but you've come close. A soft knock at your door pulls you from your thoughts. Not a client, just the rhythm tells you that. You open it a crack and find Marcia standing there, looking sheepish. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she asks. "Nisa's still throwing things." You sigh and gesture her in. She curls up at the end of your mattress without another word, like a child too tired to explain why she's scared. You lie beside her, staring at the ceiling. "You ever think about leaving?" you ask. She nods, eyes closed. "All the time. And don't know where I'd go." You understand. You've thought about running too. You even have a fantasy, slipping onto a cart headed north, finding a soul in a town where no one knows you, working as a barmaid or even a washerwoman. Something less humiliating. But then you remember what it took to survive here. How much coin it takes just to eat, to sleep, to stay safe. Out there you'd be alone. At least here you know the rules. You shift to get more comfortable, brushing against the edge of your wooden chest. It rattles softly, and you remember, the coins. You still have that little stash. 3 gold aurae, enough to get you out. Maybe, if you left tonight and didn't look back, and you don't move. Here's your historical tidbit. Female rivalry in Roman brothels wasn't just personal, it was often survival. There are scraps of legal documents and graffiti that hint at competition between prostitutes, sometimes violent. Fights over clients, territory, or even names. Some girls had to brand themselves literally just to mark their identity. Others relied on tattoos, jewellery, or even distinct perfumes to stand out. You've heard of one girl who carved her name into the doors of every room she used, claiming them like miniature empires. Fringe fact? There was a brothel in Ostia where 2 women named Sabina kept defacing each other's graffiti, scratching out names, writing insults, even accusing each other of theft. Petty? Maybe. But it's the kind of pettiness that comes from desperation. And the scholarly debate? Whether brothels had internal hierarchies. Was there a ranking system among the girls? Some think the ones closest to the entrance were the most experienced or the most profitable. Others argue it was random, based on availability or how well you got along with the Leno. In your case, you think Brynja places girls where they won't kill each other. Practical, if not strategic. Marcia is asleep now. You can hear her breathing, slow and steady. You reach for your shawl and drape it over both of you. It smells like lavender, or what's left of it. You close your eyes and listen to the Lupanar settle for the night. Creaking wood, distant snoring, the faint sound of someone weeping down the hall. You could leave, right now. You could take your coins, wake Marcia, and run. You don't. The sun hasn't risen yet. but the sky's begun that soft, dusty lightning that only comes in the briefest pocket of calm, before the world starts shouting again. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake Marcia, whose knees are drawn tight to her chest, mouth half open in the ragged peace of deep sleep. The shawl has slipped off her shoulders. You pull it back up. Her hands are resting on her belly now, almost protectively. She never talks about what she's going to do, not really, and you don't ask because whatever choice she makes, it won't be easy, and the gods know this place doesn't offer many good ones. You pull on your sandals and stretch, feeling the joints in your knees pop like breaking twigs. You didn't sleep much. You rarely do anymore. Too many thoughts, too much noise even when the brothel is quiet. You move towards the common basin, hoping to get a splash of cool water before the day starts proper. But when you round the corner, you freeze. There's a girl sitting there, one you don't know. She's tall, with tangled red-blonde hair and skin so pale you can see the blue veins in her wrists. She's scrubbing her hands raw, fingers red, shoulders hunched. Her tunic is threadbare, ill-fitting, clearly borrowed and too short in the sleeves. She doesn't look up until you're right next to her. When she does, her eyes are wide and stunned, like an animal in a trap that hasn't realised it's already been caught. You don't say anything, not yet. After a moment she speaks, voice rough and thick with a foreign accent. "Where is this?" "Pompeii," you say gently. "The Lupanar." She flinches at the name as if someone hit her. "They said it was a bathhouse." You resist the urge to curse aloud. It wouldn't be the first time someone was lied to, dragged into this place thinking it was something else, told it would be laundry work, food service, even temple duty. But one look at her and you know she's not from here. Gaul, maybe, or somewhere farther north. You've seen girls like her before. They arrive in the night, dazed, bruised, confused. By the time they figure out what they've walked into, it's already too late. "They brought me from Narbo," she whispers. "Said my debts would be forgiven." She doesn't elaborate on who they are. You don't ask. You kneel beside her, dipping a cloth into the basin. "What's your name?" She hesitates. "They called me Ayla, but I had another name before." "Do you want me to call you that one?" She shrugs. "I don't remember it." You nod, handing her the cloth. "You hungry?" you ask. She blinks. "Yes." You guide her to the kitchen alcove where a bit of hard cheese and leftover bread are wrapped in linen. She eats like someone who's unsure if she's allowed to. You sit beside her and let her finish before speaking again. "You're not a slave," you say softly, "but you'll feel like one here, and if you fight back, it'll get worse." She stares at the floor. "You have two choices," you continue. "Learn the rules fast or leave before your name ends up scratched into the walls." She nods, slow and stiff, like someone who doesn't yet understand what she's agreeing to. Later, you introduce her to Brynja. There's a brief wordless exchange, Brynja's eyes scanning Ayla like she's estimating both damage and potential. "Room 6, Brynja says flatly. "No clients until she gets cleaned up." She looks at you. "Your problem now." Of course she is. You guide Ayla through the basics. Which water's safe to drink, where to find the oil for bathing, who to avoid when they're drunk, and which torch in the hall always flickers like it's haunted. She nods along, memorizing quickly, saying almost nothing. You recognize that sounds. It's armor. You leave her in her new room, bare, stuffy, the fresco above the door worn down until the figures are more suggestion than picture. She sits on the edge of the bed, blinking at the mattress like it might bite her. "Is it always like this?" she asks finally. "Worse," you answer. Then you add, "But some days are funny. Some clients smell like boiled onions, some forget how to untie their sandals. You'll learn to laugh, even when you want to scream." She smiles. Barely. But it's something. As you walk back down the hallway, you pass Marcia, coming the other way, rubbing her eyes and muttering something about a missing sandal. You nod towards the room 6. "New girl." "Great," she says, tone dry. "Just what we need. Another broken bird." You sigh. "We were all broken birds once." "Yeah," she says, "but some of us didn't squawk so loud about it." You don't snap at her. You know she's just scared. The belly under her tunic is more noticeable today. Time's catching up. Later, while oiling your arms and straightening your hair in the bronze mirror, you think about Ayla, about how many other foreign girls have come through the Lupanar, all wide-eyed and dazed, blinking under the weight of a city that doesn't care whether they live or die. There were others, Sabina, who vanished after a week, Runa, who swore she'd run away and actually did, Tullia, who bled out in the back room after a client accidentally shoved her against the wall. You remember each of them, even if no one else does. Your historical takeaway: Rome was a cultural melting pot, but not in the sweet, idealised way people like to imagine. It was messy, brutal, and built on a hierarchy that let you buy and sell people like sacks of flour. Foreign women were often trafficked into prostitution, some as war captives, others as indentured labourers who chose sex work when all other doors closed. The Romans even had words for them: exotica, barbarae, labels that made them more appealing to clients but less human overall. Fringe fact: some of these women were sold directly at public auctions, labelled with signs noting their skills and temperament. There are records of Greek-speaking girls being charged more. Others, like women from Germania or Gaul, were considered wild and unbroken. That wasn't always a bad thing for men looking for novelty. It was a selling point. And here's the scholarly brawl: were foreign prostitutes treated worse? Some argue yes, they were outsiders in every sense. Others believe they were more protected by novelty, that their rarity gave them value, at least for a time. Either way, they rarely stayed long. The city either broke them or buried them. You stare at your reflection one last time before the first client of the morning calls your name. You smooth your tunic and step into the hall. Another day, another girl, another slow grind through the same brutal cycle, but at least she has a name, and for now, that's enough. You've been working this job long enough to know the difference between a good night and a profitable one. Last night was neither. Just a string of low-coin clients, one broken sandal, and the lingering feeling that something in your back has shifted permanently. The ache hums behind your ribs like an old drumbeat, and even the sharp scent of oil on your fingers can't drown it out. You sit on your cot, bent over your legs, rubbing your calves and wondering if you're getting older or just finally noticing what you've put your body through. Probably both. There's a knock, too soft to be a client. You open the door and Ayla is there, blinking. Her hair is brushed now, or at least tamed into submission. She's borrowed someone's blue tunic, a size too large, and cinched it with string. She smells faintly of rosemary and ash, and her mouth is stained purple from cheap wine. "How do I look?" she asks. You shrug. "Better than most." "Am I ready?" No one ever is. You let her in and sit her on the stool while you go rummaging through your trunk. You pull out the small clay jar that still holds a bit of faded rouge, and your dull bronze comb, teeth slightly bent. She watches as you dip your fingers in the red powder and smear it gently onto her cheeks. "This won't last long," you say, "but men are dumb and impressionable, and this makes you look like you have blood in your face, which they love." Next is the coal stick, more like a stub now. You wet it with a little spit and drag it carefully along her lash line. "Hold still," you mutter. You flinch. You smear it, and you'll look like a festival clown. What's a festival clown? Exactly. She doesn't laugh. She just stares into your bronze mirror, studying herself. "I look like someone else." That's the idea. Afterward, she turns her head side to side. "You ever wear wigs?" she asks. You shake your head. "Only the high-priced girls do that. That's how you know you've made it. When your hair doesn't even have to be yours," she chuckles a little. "One day, then." You grin. One day, you can wear curls down to your knees and charge a senator's son 3 denarii just to touch them. You open a small box on your shelf, fishing out the last drops of your cheap perfume. Spiced myrtle and ground iris. You dab it behind her ears. "There," you say. "Now you're ready to pretend you're someone men want instead of someone they bought." She frowns. "Isn't that the same thing?" "No," you say. "One feels worse." The Lupanar is busy this morning, which means less waiting, less thinking. Brynja's pacing the front hallway like a debt collector, barking instructions at girls and counting coin purses with a look of grim satisfaction. Ayla stands by the fountain, posture awkward, eyes darting like she's expecting to be punished just for breathing. "Don't act afraid," you murmur as you pass her. "They smell fear like dogs." Your first client is already in your room, waiting with his tunic pulled up and his legs spread like he owns the bed. He doesn't, but for a few minutes he'll pretend, and you'll let him. He's young, trying to seem older, with an oily moustache and too much cologne. You go through the motions, laugh at his dumb jokes, Call him Dominus when you know he's probably a baker's nephew. When he finishes, he tosses a silver coin in the bowl and struts out like a gladiator. You lie back for a moment and stare at the ceiling. There's a crack running through one of the painted clouds, and you try to remember if it was always there. Probably. You just didn't have time to notice before. After cleaning yourself with a damp cloth, you walk to the courtyard, needing a moment of air. There you find Merope sitting on the step, aggressively filing her nails with a shard of tile. If one more of these idiots asks if I'm Greek, I swear I'll start speaking in goat. You raise an eyebrow. Why goat? Because they'll probably like it. You snort, sliding down beside her. At least they're talking. I had one today who didn't say a single word, just grunted, finished, and left. Better than the ones who do talk, she mutters. I had one last week who gave me a monologue about his mother's cooking while I was on top of him. Ruined lentils for me forever. You sit in silence for a while, soaking up the early sun that's just begun creeping over the stone wall. The Lupanar is never peaceful, but this time of day comes close. A brief pause before the noon chaos. You hear Ella's voice from down the hall, uncertain, rehearsed. Someone's showing her the ropes. You hope they're gentle. Here's your historical injection. Roman sex workers, particularly the lower tier ones, often used makeup and scent to signal their availability. While the matronae, respectable married women, were expected to appear modest and restrained, prostitutes were encouraged and sometimes required to appear the opposite. Red cheeks, heavily lined eyes, hair curled unnaturally high, these were the marks of your trade. In fact, the more gaudy your appearance, the easier it was for a man to justify paying you for things he couldn't admit wanting from his wife. Fringe fact, some prostitutes used powdered lead to whiten their skin, giving them the pale, luminous look of statues, which of course also slowly poisoned them. Lips were coloured with crushed mulberries, nails stained with rust or ochre, and teeth sometimes cleaned with a mixture of ash and vinegar, so caustic it stripped enamel. Beauty in this business was pain in more ways than one, and the eternal scholarly debate. Whether these cosmetic rituals were empowering, performative, or just survival. Some historians claim prostitutes used makeup to craft their own identities, pushing against societal norms. Others argue that it was just another layer of commodification, a painted mask designed to fulfill fantasies that had nothing to do with the woman underneath. In truth, it was probably both. Power and cage in equal measure. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your knees, and head back to your room. On the way, you pass Ayla again. Her lips are red now, too red, and her coals smudge slightly, but she holds her head higher. She nods as you pass, just once. That's progress. In your room, you relight the oil lamp and sit cross-legged on the bed. You reach into your secret pouch and pull out your last piece of real tooth powder, saving it for a rare evening with a rich client. You think about using it today, just in case, then you slide it back into hiding. You'll wait. The right client will come. Until then, you scrub your teeth with ash and rinse with lukewarm wine like everyone else. The knock is too soft to be one of the regulars. You're reclined on your side, fiddling with a sandal strap and trying to ignore the smell of overused oil, when the tap comes again. 3 light knocks, like someone is hoping you'll pretend not to hear them. You call out, "Come in," not bothering to sound inviting. You expect a new client, maybe one of the skinny types who's too embarrassed to look you in the eye. What you don't expect is a veiled woman in full stola, stepping inside like she's lost or about to confess to a murder. She pauses at the threshold. You don't rise. Instead, you eye her from where you lie, watching her glide forward with careful, almost ceremonial steps. Her shoes are expensive. Her veil is linen so fine you can see the gleam of earrings underneath it. She smells like citrus oil and roses, not the knockoff stuff either. Real scent. The kind worn by women who have enough coin to spend on things that evaporate into the air. She doesn't speak until the curtain is fully drawn behind her. Then in a low voice edged with nerves, she says, "Are you Felicia?" "I am," you answer. You sit up slowly, watching her closely now. You can't see her face, but her posture gives her away. This isn't her first time in a brothel, but it might be the first time she's entered without a male escort or a half-dozen whispered lies on her lips. She doesn't ask for sex. She doesn't ask for company. Instead, she asks, "Do you have time?" You nod and motion to the stool. She sits gingerly, folding her hands in her lap like she's waiting for a magistrate. She doesn't remove her veil. "I'm not here for what the others come for," she begins. "I know. How?" Because you haven't taken off your gloves, and you keep glancing at the door like you're expecting it to accuse you. She gives a short, surprised laugh, and you catch the briefest glimpse of her mouth under the veil. Soft lips, painted, carefully done. I was told you give advice. You blink. From who? She hesitates. A cousin. She came here years ago. She said you spoke like someone who sees everything. You snort. Well, she's not wrong. I've seen plenty. She fiddles with the ring on her finger, a delicate gold thing shaped like a leaf. It's my husband, she says. Of course it is. He's changed. Distant. Cold. He doesn't look at me, not the way he used to. I thought, maybe if I understood what he wants, I could give it to him. You exhale and lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees. You're asking the wrong question. Then what's the right one? Why does he need to want you to make you feel whole? She stiffens. You don't let up. Let me guess. You wear what he likes, you bathe in the perfume he gave you, you smile when you're tired, and you've memorized which of his jokes are worth laughing at. She says nothing. That's your answer. Men don't go to prostitutes because we're prettier, you continue. They come here because we don't ask them to be husbands or fathers or anything real. We let them be exactly who they are without consequence. You want him to want you again? Make him feel invisible. It'll drive him mad. She's staring at the floor now, silent. You think she's about to get up and leave, but instead she says quietly, when I was younger, I wanted to be a priestess of Bonadea. You blink. That wasn't on your bingo card for today. I wasn't allowed, she continues. My father married me off before I was 15. After that, I forgot how to want anything that wasn't permitted. You watch her hands. They're trembling now, just slightly. She's holding herself together, but only because she hasn't had permission to fall apart in 20 years. You want advice, you say. Stop trying to be his fantasy. Make him earn being yours. She looks up, and for a moment her veil slips just enough to see her eyes, lined with kohl, wet at the corners. You're wasted here, she whispers. You know that? You shrug. Where else would I go? She stands, slowly smoothing her gown. Thank you, she says. Then she reaches into the folds of her sleeve and pulls out a small object. Round, heavy. A tiny silver mirror. She sets it on your shelf without looking at it. For you, she says. Not payment. A gift. You open your mouth to protest, but she's already disappearing behind the curtain. You stare at the mirror for a long time after she leaves. It's delicate, rimmed with patterns of ivy and doves. The kind of thing a woman keeps in a drawer lined with silk. You don't have silk. You wrap it in a rag and tuck it beneath your mattress. Out in the atrium, someone is playing dice, and someone else is already arguing over whose client snored too loud. You walk past them, back to the shrine, and light a stick of incense, not for Venus, but for the stranger who might finally be learning how to want again. Historical fact of the moment? Despite Rome's rigid gender roles, upper-class women did seek out prostitutes, not always for sex, but for advice, gossip, and secrets. Brothels functioned like shadow salons. Information flowed both ways. A well-placed word from a prostitute could make or break a household. Some women, especially those married to powerful men, came to brothels for leverage. Fringe detail? There were whispers, satirical poems mostly, that noble women sometimes disguised themselves as working girls and snuck into the subura to sleep with strangers. Whether they did it for the thrill or for revenge is up for debate. One such poem even describes a senator's wife who paid double just so she could order a man to leave after she was done. Scholarly debate, whether these tales were real or just Roman male fantasy designed to shame powerful women. Some historians argue that noble women used brothels as a space to experiment with control in a world that offered them none. Others believe these stories were moral warnings, exaggerations meant to reinforce class boundaries. Either way, the myth persisted. You press your fingers to the corner of your lip and feel the faded rouge. It's smeared, but you don't bother fixing it. Not right now. You just sit for a while holding the weight of that mirror in your mind, wondering what it would be like to see yourself clearly, with no veil, no makeup, no act. Just you. By late morning, the city outside the brothel is roaring with motion, cartwheels rattling against stone, vendors screaming about olives and salted fish, the the rhythmic bark of Roman commerce doing what it does best, moving product. Inside the Lupanar, the rhythm is slower, more fragmented. A girl's sandals slap unevenly down the hallway. Someone's laughing in the back room. Brynja is chasing a drunk out the front door using a broom and a string of swears that would make a soldier blush. You've learned to tune it all out, focus your energy inward, conserve what little of it you have left for the next performance. But today, you're distracted. There's a man outside your door hovering. He hasn't knocked, just standing there. You can hear him shifting weight, one foot to the other, breathing shallowly like he's building courage. You finally open the curtain yourself, only to find him startled. Tall, maybe in his 40s, eyes darting like a boy caught sneaking wine. He clears his throat. "Do you register?" he asks. You blink. That's not a usual question. "I do," you say. "Why?" He frowns, adjusts the belt on his tunic. "I was told to ear. I work with the cohortes urbanae. We're doing a review." "Of what?" You almost laugh. "A review? Like someone's going to rate your posture and give you a certificate of excellence?" But this isn't new. Every now and then Rome gets anxious about its own vices. The Registry of Meritrators, prostitutes legally licensed by the state, is one of the empire's favourite hypocrisies. They legalise the trade, tax it, regulate it, and then periodically send men like this to check that you're following the rules, as if anyone in this line of work is here by choice and not necessity. "Do you need to see my name?" you ask, deadpan. He hesitates, caught between duty and discomfort. "If it's not too much trouble." You roll your eyes and retrieve the wax tablet Brynja keeps in the drawer under the front counter. She updates it monthly. Your name is there, scratched in clumsy lettering, along with your age, probably a guess, your city of origin, wrong, and a note that reads, "Well behaved, rarely complains." You hand it over. He reads it quickly, then hands it back with a nod. "Thank you," he mutters. You raise an eyebrow. "Is that it?" "Yes, just a formality." He starts to walk away, then pauses. "Do you mind if I ask, does registration help?" You stare at him for a moment, wondering whether he's being naive or just testing you. "It keeps me from being arrested," you say. "Sometimes." He nods slowly. "But does it protect you?" "Not even a little." He nods again, looking down. Then he leaves. You don't know if he's going to write anything down or report back to anyone. Maybe this was just some absurd game of political theatre, some senator's idea of cleaning up the city by bothering the people who already suffer most. Back in your room, you sit on your cot and stare at the wax tablet for a long time. That little rectangle is supposed to mean you're safe, legal, accounted for. And yet, if someone decides to drag you into an alley and rough you up, no one's going to check your paperwork before walking past. The registry is Rome's favourite kind of lie, a way to pretend the system works without doing the work. You've known girls who worked unregistered for years. Some got caught and fined, some vanished after one too many visits from the wrong kind of customer. You chose to register because Brynja told you it was smart and you trusted her. But now, you're not sure it's made much difference at all. And the real irony? Men like your visitor today will happily visit girls off the list. Especially the ones too young or too scared to say no. They just don't want to be seen doing it. The registry isn't about you. It's about protecting them. Ayla pokes her head in later, asking what you think about her new earrings. Bronze hoops she found in a laundry pile. "Don't get caught," you mutter. "If Brynja sees you wearing stolen jewellery, she'll take your ears with them." She laughs, twirls once, and disappears back into the hallway like a coin tossed into the air, shiny and uncertain. You can't help wondering if she'll make it. Maybe she'll last a month, maybe longer. Sometimes the quiet ones survive the longest. They learn fast, they don't fight the current. They let it carry them, mouth closed, eyes open. You used to be like that. But eventually even the best swimmers get tired. Lunch today is a cup of barley gruel and some dried apple slices someone smuggled in from a client's cart. You chew slowly, sitting on the back step with Merope, who's got her feet in a bowl of vinegar water and is mumbling to herself about men with hairy backs. "They're doing inspections again," you say, between bites. She groans. "Figures, election year?" "Probably," she scoffs. "Rome pretends to care about us every 4 years. Then they raise taxes and raid the taverns for show." You nod. "You registered?" "Once," she says. "Lost my name after that riot in the Subura. Started using a different one, never got back on the list. You worried? She shrugs. About what? A fine I can't pay? A senator's son calling me illegal after he's already finished? Let them try. You sit in silence for a while, the sound of the city buzzing faintly around you. There's a cat napping on the roof above the brothel's courtyard. A pigeon struts by like it owns the place. For a moment, everything feels almost peaceful. Historical footnote. The Roman prostitute registry wasn't universal and it wasn't protective. Women who registered as meretresses gave up legal protections, including the right to accuse a Roman citizen of assault, that's right. Once you were registered, your voice had less weight in court than a slave's. The state recorded your name not to help you, but to mark you as permanently other. Fringe detail. Some women tried to avoid registration even if they worked openly, because once your name was on the list, it followed you forever. Even if you married, left the city, or became a respected matron, that mark stayed. You could leave the brothel, but you'd never leave the list. And the debate? Whether registration was ever truly enforced. Some scholars think it was a patchy system, upheld more in Rome itself than in the provinces. Others believe it was selectively applied, used to control undesirables rather than create any kind of standard. The only thing that seems certain is that no one in power cared whether you felt protected by it. You set your empty cup down and stretch. The day's only half over. The next client could be rich or drunk or both. He could be gentle, he could be something else entirely. But whatever he is, you'll open the door with your legal name in your mouth and a fake smile on your face. Because here, being legal just means knowing which rules they'll bother pretending to follow. By the time darkness creeps back into the Lupanar, it's as if the walls inhale with it. Everything changes in the evening, the pacing, the tone, even the air. The day clients are simple, predictable, like old sandals you know how to walk in. But the night ones, they're wild cards. Drunk, angry, ambitious, sentimental. They come in waves, some laughing, some quiet, all full of whatever they've been drinking since noon. You feel the shift in your gut as much as your bones, and tonight it's going to be one of those nights. It starts with the shouting. Not the violent kind, not yet, but the kind fueled by too much wine and too little self-awareness. A group of men stagger in wrapped in cloaks lined with gold thread, loud and confident in that specific, over-perfumed way of men who want everyone to know they've had money for generations. One of them slaps the fresco wall and announces, "I want her," pointing at a painted figure caught mid-thrust with her legs in the air like a gymnast possessed. The joke lands poorly. Merope shouts back, "She's booked, sweetheart. Try someone with an actual pulse." You're already on your feet, brushing stray oil from your tunic and checking your hair. You know these types. They're not here for intimacy or even novelty. They're here to show each other how unbothered they are by shame. They'll toss coins, demand group sessions, invent new rules that no one agreed to. You consider ducking out for a while, hiding in the storeroom and pretending to be indisposed, but Brynja catches your eye from across the atrium and gives the slightest nod. That's your cue. You step forward as the men glance around. One of them, taller, darker-haired, less wine-drunk than the rest, spots you and taps his companion. "That one," he mutters. "She's the one they talk about." The other snorts. "She looks bored already." "Perfect," says the first. "She won't be afterward." They draw straws. You win, or lose. Depends how you measure these things. He follows you into your room, not without bumping into the doorframe and laughing about it. He's not cruel, not yet, just loud and careless. As soon as the curtain falls, he drops the performance. That's the thing about night clients. They often arrive playing a role, but once the privacy settles around them, what's underneath bleeds out. Sometimes it's vulnerability, sometimes rage, sometimes just sadness wrapped in bravado. He doesn't undress fully, just pulls up his tunic and leans back on your bed like it's his. He doesn't ask your name, he knows it already, but he does ask questions, oddly enough. "How long have you worked here?" "A few years," you lie. "Do you like it?" "No one likes it." "Fair." He pauses. "You always this quiet?" "Only with the ones who don't tip." That gets a laugh, and then a coin tossed your way. Silver, not bad. You catch it, bite it lightly, and smile without warmth. It's going to be a long hour. The session is easy enough. He's more talk than action, more show than substance. Afterward, he lies there for a while, staring at the wall like he's hoping it will answer something. "You know," he says, My father used to come here, or somewhere like here. That's how I knew about this place. You say nothing. He keeps going. I used to think it was disgusting, that he was a monster. But now, I get it. You raise an eyebrow. You just needed to experience it for yourself. I needed to know why he chose this over home. You don't answer. That's not your job. You let him sit with it. Eventually he stands, smooths his tunic and leaves without another word. You close the curtain behind him and sit down hard. Some nights are physically exhausting. Others feel like emotional grave robbing. When you step into the hallway again, you hear laughter. Real, unguarded laughter. Ayla is standing near the common room with one of the kitchen boys, grinning, cheeks flushed. "What's going on?" you ask. "He told me I don't look like a prostitute," she says, still giggling. "That I look like a priestess." You smirk. "Same thing sometimes." She beams, radiant in a way that won't last but is nice to see. "He said I should charge double." "Did you?" "Of course." Brynja brushes past, grumbling. "Keep laughing like that, someone will think you're enjoying yourself." You lean against the wall and watch as the night unfolds. The doors open and close, coins clink into bowls, wine spills, a girl vomits in a basin, someone breaks a stool. The usual. You go through 2 more clients before the bells chime for midnight. One is gentle but boring. The other is so drunk you have to hold him upright. Neither leaves much behind except for the sour scent of regret and a few crumpled copper coins. You retreat to the back near the garden courtyard and breathe in the night air. It smells like wet dust and old fig leaves. Merope joins you, wiping her mouth with a damp cloth. "I had a guy ask if I could sing," she mutters. "Tried to turn the whole thing into a musical." You laugh. "Did you?" "Yeah, I sang about his tiny cock." You snort so hard it hurts your ribs. Historical detail of the night. Evening was always the busiest time for brothels in ancient Rome. After the markets closed and the business ended, men had fewer eyes watching and more wine in their bellies. That's when the Lupanars lit up, sometimes literally, with torches placed outside to signal availability. Some brothels even stayed open all night, their doors marked by symbolic images, pine cones, phalluses, lamps, fringe fact. Some clients came in pairs or groups, not always for orgies, but sometimes just to share the experience. There are graffiti in Pompeii that read like Yelp reviews from ancient frat boys. I came with Cato and Lucius, great time, 2 for 1. Whether they were joking or just that comfortable is unclear, probably both, and the scholar tug of war, whether nighttime visits were considered more shameful than daytime ones. Some believe night meant secrecy, indulgence, loss of control, or others think night visits were simply practical, easier to sneak away from duties, spouses, or senatorial meetings. In any case, the night belonged to you, and them, and every unsaid thing they brought with them. Back in your room, you lie down fully clothed, too tired to clean up, too wired to sleep. Your skin smells like other people, your muscles hum with repetition, but your eyes are open, staring at the cracked fresco above the bed. 2 lovers frozen mid-motion, their faces wiped clean by time. You close your eyes, you dream of silence, you don't wake so much as come back to the surface. Sleep in this place never feels like real rest, more like dipping under, hiding for a while, then surfacing again into the same air, same stone, same weight in your chest. The morning's already begun without you. You hear the familiar shuffle of sandals on stone, water being poured into a basin, a short scream of frustration that's probably Brynja chasing rats again. One of the girls hums softly from down the hall. You can't tell who. Maybe Julia, her voice always wavers like she's trying to remember a song her mother used to sing. You sit up slowly, your back cracks. Your mouth tastes like regret and stale wine. You slept in your tunic again, and now it clings to your skin with a faint sourness you don't bother trying to identify. You pour a little water from your jug into a cloth and wipe your face, wincing at the cold. No clients yet, no knocks, just the early lull, that fragile pocket of calm before the city starts grinding its gears. The mirror from the senator's wife, the silver one, sits untouched under your mattress. You haven't used it, haven't even unwrapped it since that night. But you think about it every morning. Like today, you reach for it slowly, pulling back the cloth and holding the mirror up toward the low, dusty light. It's beautiful. Dented at the rim, yes, but elegant in a way nothing else you own is. You tilt it, catching your reflection. You almost look like a stranger. The makeup's mostly faded, the dark smudges under your eyes deepening into shadows of their own. Your hairs come loose, curling around your ears in tired, uneven waves. There's a faint bruise at your collarbone, last night's souvenir. You look older today, not ancient, just worn, like a wall fresco that's seen too many torch flames. You wrap the mirror again and tuck it away. Down the hall, a voice calls out, "Felicia, visitor." You groan. It's too early for this. You throw on your cleaner shawl, cleaner being relative, and head to the front room. It's not a client. It's a boy, 10, maybe 11, holding a scroll in both hands and sweating like someone dropped him in a furnace. "Are you Felicia?" he asks, eyes wide. You nod. "Message." He holds it out like it might bite you. You take the scroll, untie the string. The wax seal is unmarked. Plain. No crest. That's unusual. You open it and read, "Tomorrow, noon. Bathhouse of Julia Felix. Private room, come alone. No name, no reason. Just that." You look at the boy. "Who sent this?" He shrugs. "A woman. Tall. Wore green." Not helpful. You toss him a coin anyway, and he runs off like a lizard in sandals. You reread the note. Bathhouse of Julia Felix. That's not a place for people like you. It's where respectable women go, the ones with stolers and servants and opinions they whisper in marble courtyards. You've heard of it. Luxury baths, quiet pools, perfumed steam and real towels. Not the communal wash basins and mildew-slick floors you're used to. You once saw a magistrate's wife disappear behind its doors like a queen entering a temple. Why are you being summoned there? You fold the note and stuff it into your waistband. You say nothing to Brynja. She wouldn't stop you, but she'd ask questions. You're not ready for those. Instead, you spend the day working. 2 clients before noon, both forgettable. One keeps calling you Livia and apologizes every time. The other asks you to describe how it feels to be watched. You lie, obviously. Okay, but you do it with flair. He gives you an extra coin. You wash quickly, change into your cleanest tunic, still plain but not threadbare, and wrap yourself in a cloak that hides more than it reveals. You pull your hair back tight, twist it into something close to a style you've seen rich women wear. It doesn't hold well, but it's good enough for passing glances. When you arrive at Julia Felix's bathhouse, you hesitate at the gate. The outer wall is smooth white stone, clean and painted with delicate ivy patterns. There's no sign, but you don't need one. The guards nod as you approach, though their eyes linger. You look out of place and they know it. Still they say nothing. One leads you inside. It's beautiful, quiet but alive. Fountains trickle, warm air hugs your skin, the walls gleam with polished mosaics, peacocks, dolphins, scenes of seafoam and wind-tossed robes. The floor beneath your sandals is smooth, cool. You feel like you're stepping into a painting. A servant meets you in the corridor, says nothing and leads you to a side room. Inside, cushions, a small fountain, a low table set with olives and dried dates. And her, the woman in green. She's older than you, maybe in her 40s, with silver threaded into her black braid and rings on every finger. She gestures to the cushions. You sit. "Thank you for coming," she says. Her voice is calm, deliberate, educated. "I didn't know I had a choice." She smiles, not unkindly. "That's fair. Do you know who I am?" You shake your head. "I'm Vibia Sevra. My husband sits on the local council." You keep your expression still. "I've heard of you," she continues. "From more than one person. You have a reputation. You listen." You wait. "I need someone to help me learn what men want, and not in the way you're thinking." Now you speak. "You want blackmail?" She laughs. "I want leverage. There's a difference." You fold your hands in your lap. "And you think I'm your way in?" She meets your gaze. "You're invisible, Felicia. That's what makes you dangerous. No one sees you, but you see everything." You don't answer. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out a pouch. 10 denarii now. 10 more if you return tomorrow with information. I want to know what my husband says when he thinks no one's listening. You take the pouch. It's heavy. You leave the bathhouse with your heart beating faster than it has in weeks. Historical detail for this chapter. Elite Roman women were not powerless, but their power came through indirect means. They weren't allowed in the Senate or courts, but they controlled households, alliances, and sometimes, through webs of gossip and servants, entire political careers. Many had their own networks, slaves, freed women, even prostitutes, who fed them information others dismissed. Fringe fact: there's evidence that some brothels doubled as intelligence hubs, not by accident, but design. Prostitutes heard confessions, pillow talk, political whispers. Some even sold that information to senators' wives or their rivals. Rome ran on secrets, and secrets had a price. Academic debate, whether these women were just lucky opportunists or deliberate agents of influence. Some historians credit them with subtle but significant shifts in power. Others argue that stories like Vibia Severa's are anomalies, not patterns. But the fact remains. In Rome, silence was currency. And you've just been paid to spend it. As you re-enter the Lupanar, you tuck the coin pouch deep under your tunic. Tomorrow you'll become something else, not just Felicia. A spy. You don't sleep that night. Not properly. You lie down, sure, and close your eyes, but your mind keeps rolling through questions with no good answers. What exactly does Vibia Severa want? What will her husband say that she doesn't already know? And why you? You're not a trained spy. You're a prostitute with sore feet and a memory that holds more secrets than names. But maybe that's why. Maybe that's what makes you useful. By dawn, you've decided you'll go back. 10 denarii is too much to ignore, and if you play this right, there could be more. Maybe enough to finally get out of this place. You've always said you wouldn't leave unless you had somewhere better to go. Maybe this is your opening. You rise quietly, stepping over Marcia's sleeping form. She's curled up again in your corner, belly heavier now. You brush a lock of hair from her face and whisper, "Still here," just to reassure yourself. You wash up fast, use the last of your wine as a rinse, and apply a little kohl around your eyes. Not much, just enough to sharpen your edges. You wear the same tunic from yesterday, now scrubbed, and wrap yourself again in that cloak that makes you look more than what you are. Outside, the city is already moving. Vendors shouting, carts creaking, someone arguing loudly with a goat that won't move. You slip through the streets like a shadow. No one looks too long. No one stops you. You're becoming good at that, being there without being seen. At the bathhouse, a different servant greets you. Male, silent, expressionless. He nods and gestures toward the inner hall, then leaves you to find your own way. You walk the same path as yesterday, but it feels different now, heavier, like the air itself knows something's changed. You reach the same room, step through the veil, and there she is, Vibia, sitting cross-legged in a chair, shaped like a half shell. Dressed in a new gown, this one wine-red and embroidered with birds. She gestures to a stool. "You came," she says. "Of course. And?" "You'll get your answers," you reply. "But first we need rules." She raises an eyebrow. "Rules? I tell you what I hear, but I don't tell you who told me. I don't put other girls in danger, and I never follow anyone. I don't spy, I listen." "Fair," she says, then smiles slightly. "You're better at this than most senators." You hand her a folded scrap of parchment. On it, 3 names. Men you overheard in your hallway just last night, talking too loud after too much wine. You jotted down the details in your head. One discussing a loan he shouldn't have taken, another admitting he voted against his patron in the last election, and the third, Vibia's husband, drunkenly bragging about a land grab involving falsified temple records. It's not much, but it's enough. She reads quickly, her expression unreadable. Then she folds the paper and tucks it into her sleeve. "Excellent," she murmurs. "This will do." You get up to leave, but she stops you with a question. "What do you want, Felicia?" You pause. The usual answer is coin. That's the safe answer. But something about her, her calm, her eyes, the way she says your name like it's worth something, makes you risk honesty. "I want out, not just of the brothel, of all of it." She nods, thoughtful. "Then let's make this more than one night." And just like that, you're someone else. Not just a body in a bed, not just a name on a wax tablet. You're a woman with information, a broker, a risk. Back at the Lupanar, you don't tell anyone where you were. You return quietly, as though you just went to piss and took your time. You pass Brynja on the way in. She gives you a look, curious, suspicious, but doesn't stop you. You've earned that much space, and you return to work. 3 clients in the afternoon. One asks to be slapped. One wants to be sung to. One just cries in your lap for 15 minutes and then leaves without touching you. You don't ask why. You never ask why. Between clients, you write down what you hear. Not everything. Just the important pieces. Like who's arguing with who, who's paying more than usual. Which girl has the senator's nephew in her room every Tuesday? You don't tell Vibia any of that yet. You're building leverage of your own. If this turns sideways, you'll need it. Historical detail. It wasn't uncommon for brothels in Rome to function as informal information exchanges. With so many men letting their guards down in intimate moments, prostitutes became walking archives. Some kept mental tallies of names, secrets, alliances. In rare cases, they passed that knowledge to women of higher rank, wives, mistresses, sometimes even enemies. Fringe fact, there's a legend about a prostitute in Capua who blackmailed a wealthy merchant for years just by pretending to know things about his business dealings. She didn't actually know anything. She just guessed well, kept quiet, and let his guilt do the work. She ended up with a villa on the coast. Scholarly debate. Whether the role of prostitutes in Roman political life has been overstated or undervalued. Some argue they were simply vessels for male confession, walls to whisper at. Others suggest they were active agents in shaping decisions, especially when paired with intelligent patrons. The truth probably lies somewhere between. Not powerless, not all-powerful, just sharp enough to survive with a blade made of words. As night falls, you slip outside to the courtyard, where Ayla is sitting cross-legged on the rim of the fountain, humming again. She looks up when you approach. "You were gone," she says. "Just for a bit." "Where to?" You smile. "A bath." She grins. "Was it a good one?" "The best I've had in years." She leans back and stares at the stars, which blink faintly above the roofline. "Sometimes I think I'll disappear one day. Just vanish, like steam off a cup." "We all do," you say. "Some just take longer." Inside, the oil lamps flicker low. The hallway smells of beeswax, sweat, and too many promises made too easily. You slip back into your room, close the curtain, and light your own lamp. The flame dances. You open your secret pouch and count your coins again. More than yesterday. Still not enough. But now you have something more than money. You have worth. Not just to the men who buy you, to the ones who fear you. You're sitting at the edge of the courtyard, carving tiny grooves into a piece of wood with the end of a broken hairpin, when you hear the slap of sandals approaching fast. The sound is different from the usual, more urgent, less performative. You look up just as Brynja storms round the corner, her shawl half slipping from one shoulder, face set in a kind of angry panic. "Where were you last night?" she snaps. You blink, slow and careful. "Here." It's not a lie. You did return, eventually. She stares at you, eyes sharp and unblinking. "Someone saw you leave. Said you were dressed like a freedwoman." You go to the baths, still calm. "I needed a proper wash." "With whose money?" "Client paid for it." Also not a lie. Brynja exhales through her nose. She doesn't like not knowing things. She runs this place like a merchant's ledger. Every girl, every coin, every detail filed and known. Your movements are usually predictable. When they're not, she notices. "No secrets, Amnio." "Yeah," she warns, voice low. "You know that's how we stay safe." You nod. "I'm not keeping secrets, I'm just keeping options." Her jaw tenses. Then she nods once and walks off. But you know that look, she's not done with you. She's just shelving it for now. Back in your room, you sit with your back to the wall and try to make sense of the shifting weight inside your chest. You've always played by the house's rules. Never loudly, never blindly, but enough to avoid conflict. Now you're not just dancing on the edge of them, you're stepping clean off. You pull out the silver mirror and study your face. It's become a ritual, this check-in with the reflection you don't entirely trust. Something about your eyes has changed. Not just tiredness, though that's there, always, but a kind of alertness too, a readiness. You're not entirely who you were 3 weeks ago. Your second meeting with Vibia takes place that evening, in the private courtyard behind the bathhouse. There's a pergola covered in flowering vines and a stone bench shaped like a sea serpent. The torchlight is low. She doesn't sit this time. She's pacing. "I need more," she says as soon as you arrive. "Something useful, political. Do you know of any affairs?" You raise a brow. "You mean besides the dozens happening in the Lupanar every week?" She's not amused. "My husband's taken a side in something he shouldn't have. There's talk of money missing from the temple fund. If I had proof, I could protect our estate." You lean back against a pillar. "And if you don't get proof?" "Then I watch everything burn while pretending to drink wine." You nod slowly. "I'll see what I can find." She hands you a pouch. More denarii. You don't count it in front of her. That's part of the deal now. trust wrapped in a performance neither of you fully believe in. Back at the brothel, you listen harder than usual. Your ears pick up more now, not just words, but tone, hesitation, breath. You begin charting which clients return, which speak in half sentences, which drink too much before letting something slip. One man complains about temple taxes being diverted to private homes. Another boasts about buying a plot of land that wasn't really for sale. You memorize every detail. Then one night you catch a break. The client is a mid-level magistrate with wine breath and a bad temper. He insists on talking during the entire session, complaining about the city, his rivals, and most importantly, the recent construction work being funded quietly with public money. He names names, and one of them is Vibia's husband. You don't react. You just nod along, make the right noises, and file it away. Later you write it down on a strip of linen and hide it beneath a loose brick in your room. Marcia finds you there, crouched on the floor, brushing nails and dust from your knees. "You're hiding something," she says, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one we get right before we stop being one of them." You don't answer. She walks away. Historical detail: mid-level Roman politicians were often corrupt, not because the system was broken, but because it was designed that way. Favours, bribes, and personal gifts funded everything from aqueduct repairs to religious festivals. Prostitution, though technically beneath them, was often where they let their tongues slip. Nothing makes a man more honest than his own arrogance. Fringe fact? In one recorded case, a prostitute in Baiae overheard a conversation between two senators plotting to defund a rival's temple. She reported it, anonymously, by scratching the details onto a wall near the forum. The scandal exploded within days. No one ever found out who she was. Scholarly debate, whether the intelligence passed through brothels had real political impact, or whether it was just gossip disguised as danger. Some argue these secrets rarely reached beyond pillow talk. Others insist brothels were early intelligence hubs, unofficial but crucial. Either way, Rome's power structures weren't just built in marble halls. They were whispered into the shadows, traded over bodies and candles and coin. You deliver the information to Vibia 2 days later. She reads it with a blank face, then nods once and says, "This will do. You've just saved my estate." You don't ask how, you don't ask what comes next. But later that week, one of the magistrates you named is arrested for misappropriation of sacred funds. You hear the news while you're oiling your legs. Brynja mutters about it while chewing dates. She doesn't look at you while she says it, but you feel her gaze afterward. And for the first time you realise, someone's watching you now. Not as a girl in a brothel, as something else. And maybe that's more dangerous than anything you've done so far. There's a knock at your door that's not really a knock, just a hesitant brush of knuckles, followed by silence. You pause mid-comb, fingers tangled in your hair, and call out, "Come in!" The curtain parts, and Marcia steps through, looking older than she did just 2 weeks ago. Not just tired, aged, like the weight of something invisible has sunk down into her bones. She doesn't speak at first, just stands there, arms crossed under her chest, eyes fixed on the floor. Finally she says, "I'm leaving." You blink. "What?" "I'm going north," she murmurs, "to stay with my aunt. She has a farm, it's small, but she said I could help with the goats." You set the comb down carefully, and the baby, she touches her stomach, it's hers now. She always wanted a daughter. She says she won't ask questions. You nod slowly, the words taking a moment to settle. "When?" "Tomorrow, before sunrise." She looks up. Brynja doesn't know. You want to protest, not because it's wrong, but because it's sudden. And you've come to rely on her presence, her grumbling, her honesty, her occasional quiet laughter, when something in the world tilts absurdly enough to warrant it. You thought she'd be around, that maybe the two of you would figure out a way out together someday. But here she is, packing up before dawn like a fugitive from her own past. "I stole bread," she says, as if confessing. "And oil. Don't tell." You smile faintly. "I'll miss you." "No, you won't," she says. "You'll be busy turning into someone important." She walks over, presses something into your hand. A small ring, iron, set with a bit of red glass. "For luck," she says. "It's fake." "I know." When she's gone, you sit on your cot and stare at the ring in your palm. It's cheap, chipped, clearly from a vendor stall, but you curl your fingers around it like it's sacred. You don't sleep much that night. Just lie there and listen to the sounds of the brothel. Laughter, moaning, footsteps, someone vomiting in the courtyard, the usual soundtrack of other people's choices. Before dawn, you creep to the back hall and watch through the cracks in the gate as Marcia slips into the street, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, belly hidden, steps swift. You don't wave, she doesn't look back, you wonder if she'll make it. The rest of the day feels different. Not because it's quieter, it isn't, but because everything's shifted a degree sideways. Ayla is tense. She's begun limping slightly, favouring her right side. You ask if she's all right. She shrugs. Rough night. Big client. You don't press. You've had your share of those. Brynja, though, is watching you more closely. She calls you into the side room after your third client, a soldier with more scars than teeth, and leans against the doorway, arms crossed. You've been busy, she says. Haven't left the Lupanar much, you reply. That's the thing, she mutters. You don't have to. The girls talk, the clients talk, and somehow you always know things before me. You keep your face neutral. I listen well. Too well, she says. Tell me this. Are you working for someone else now? You hold her gaze. Not against you. She nods once, slowly, then walks over and sits beside you. I should have pulled you in months ago, she says. Used you better. You're smart. Smarter than me, probably. But you're playing a game now, and games have rules. If you break them, people get hurt. You nod. I know, she stands. If you're going to keep collecting secrets, at least bring some to me. You owe me that. You don't disagree. That night, Vibia doesn't summon you. You're relieved. You need space, time to think, so you do what you haven't done in weeks. You walk the city, not far, just far enough, past the bakery where they burn the crusts just right. Past the fountain with the chipped nymph, where someone always leaves a fresh fig. You end up at the Temple of Fortuna, not to pray, just to look. The flames flicker behind the grating. You think of Marcia, of her face disappearing into darkness. You whisper, let her make it. No one answers, of course. You return to the Lupanar and find Ayla crying softly in the laundry room. She's clutching a bloodied rag and rocking back and forth. You crouch beside her. What happened? He didn't stop, she whispers. I said no. I said it hurt. Your hands ball into fists. Brynja said he's rich, important, that I should have just been quiet. You help her clean up. You bring her to your room and let her sleep on your cot. You stand guard at the curtain all night, arms crossed, eyes burning. Morning comes, and the city keeps moving, indifferent as always. Historical truth. Roman prostitutes had no protection from assault, even when registered. They were considered infames, a legal term meaning their testimony didn't hold up in court. Once marked as such, you could be beaten, raped, or even killed without the same consequences that would follow if you were a respectable woman. Your body became property, open, disposable. Fringe fact. Some women got tattoos not just to mark themselves as property of a brothel, but as warnings, symbols inked into the wrist or inner arm that read, do not harm. It didn't always work, but it was a form of protest. However small. And the scholarly debate, was there any legal path for a prostitute to seek justice? Some claim exceptions existed, if a client was a slave, or if the girl was underage, or if the violence disrupted public order. Others argue the law never truly applied to women like you. You existed in a grey space, regulated, taxed, but never protected. You sit with Ayla as she sleeps, you rub your thumb over the fake ruby in Marcia's ring, and you make a decision. Vibia wants political secrets, fine. But you're going to start collecting a different kind of power. The kind that doesn't beg senators for mercy. The kind that burns down the whole rotten house from the inside. The first step isn't revenge, it's control. You sit down that morning with a bowl of dried figs and yesterday's crusty bread and begin making a mental list. Not of enemies, not yet, but of leverage. You think like a merchant now, not a girl in a bed. Who owes you? Who fears you? Who thinks you're just another shadow behind a curtain? First on the list, Gaius, the banker's son. Arrogant, soft-palmed, always flush with his father's coin, and no sense of consequences, he's come to the Lupanar twice a week for months, preferring younger girls and always requesting they call him Dominus Maximus. You know his secret, he's in debt. Deep. He talks about it like it's a game. Just until Saturnalia, he says. just until the grain shipments come in. But you've seen the letters in his pouch when he's too drunk to notice. Real ones, from real lenders, with real threats. You write his name down first, next, Decimus, the temple assistant. Quiet, unassuming, but always asking questions he shouldn't. You caught him once rifling through Brynja's ledger under the pretense of paying respects. You didn't say anything then, but now you remember. You remember everything. And then there's Lurio, the baker's cousin. He brings honey rolls when he visits and always slips an extra coin under the mattress. Like that makes him kind. But he also likes girls who flinch, and he once made Ala wear a chain around her neck for fun. You've watched him, heard his name in whispers. He's more dangerous than he looks. You don't write his name, not yet. His type deserves more than a list. That night, Vibia summons you a Bonadin. This time to a villa outside the city proper, somewhere in the hills where the air smells like pine resin and nobody screams in the night unless it's part of a ritual. The servant meets you at the gate, leads you through a garden filled with marble birds and creeping ivy. Vibia is waiting in a colonnade, wine in hand, eyes sharper than ever. I heard you've been asking questions, she says. You nod. Good ones. To whom? To people who matter. And what did you learn? Enough to be dangerous. She sips her wine. Show me. You pull a small piece of parchment from your cloak. On it, 2 names, 3 figures, and a date. It doesn't look like much, but it's a schedule of temple distributions, doctored to hide misused funds. You explain how Decimus forged signatures to funnel grain into a private villa. You don't say how you found it, you just say it's real. Vibia reads it, then folds it slowly. This is good, she says. Better than I expected. She tucks the paper into her robe and looks at you closely. You're becoming quite useful. You meet her gaze. I want more than coins. She tilts her head. What then? A way out. Somewhere to go. Somewhere clean. She smiles faintly. Clean doesn't exist, but I can offer quiet, land, a cottage maybe, far from here. You nod. I'll earn it. When you return to the Lupanar, Brynja is waiting. She doesn't yell, she doesn't accuse, she just points to the corner of the room and says, Ala hasn't moved all day. You find her curled up, silent, her breath shallow. Her face is blotchy, her hands trembling. You sit beside her and wrap your arms around her shoulders. She whispers, I don't want to do this anymore. I know. Can I be like you? You don't know what that means. You're not sure she does either. But you say yes. You give her the list you started. She reads it slowly, then looks at you with something close to awe. We're keeping score now? We always were, you say. We just never wrote it down. Over the next few nights, the list grows. You don't gather everything yourself. You send girls to listen, not to pry, just to be present, invisible the way you've always been. The information trickles in, who bribed whom, who beat their servant, who talks too much when they think no one's listening. The Lupanar becomes a different place. Not on the surface, clients still come, coins still clink, backs still arch and mouths still moan. But beneath it there's something else growing. A network, a quiet web, and you're sitting in the centre of it. Historical truth: in late imperial Rome, brothels began functioning more like informal guilds. Women shared knowledge, even created codes to protect each other. Some historians believe these early forms of solidarity planted the seeds for later female networks, though they weren't always romantic or ideal. Sometimes they were survival, plain and brutal. Fringe fact? In one Lupanar in southern Gaul, archaeologists found a series of tiny carved tablets, lists of names, transactions, warnings. It looked like accounting, but some of the symbols were unfamiliar. Cipher, maybe, or a code shared among workers to keep track of dangerous clients. One name appeared 27 times. And the scholarly debate: how organised were these brothels really? Some argue they were simple, individual businesses with no cooperation between girls. Others insist the women formed complex, whispered alliances, proto-unions of sorts. The truth is murky. Most records were written by men, and men rarely bother preserving the thoughts of the women they sleep with. But your truth? You're building something now. It doesn't have a name, it doesn't need one. But it's real. Brynja pulls you aside after a week and says, I hear less screaming, more laughter. You nod. I've noticed too. She pauses. You're changing things. Not enough. It's a start. Later, Gaius the banker's son stumbles into your room, drunk, arrogant, bragging again. You press your hand to his cheek, lean in close and whisper, "Pay your debts, Gaius. They're watching." He blinks, confused. "What?" "The ones you owe. They're talking." You smile sweetly. "Maybe next time you should bring more than pocket change." He leaves rattled. You let him go, because fear is worth more than a coin, and some debts can't be measured in silver. You wake to the sound of water being poured outside your room, but it's not the usual slap and slosh of morning cleanup. It's quieter, steadier, like someone's being careful not to spill. You lie still, listening. Then a soft knock. Not one of the girls, not a client either. When you pull back the curtain, it's the child. 8, maybe 9. Boy. Familiar. He's the same messenger from weeks ago, the one who brought Vibia's first scroll. He holds out a bundle. No words, just a tight mouth and wide eyes. You take the bundle, it's a small linen pouch, heavy in your hand, and unwrap it slowly. Inside a single gold aureus. Real. Gleaming. That alone would be enough to rent a room in a decent part of town for weeks, maybe even a month. But there's more. A note, folded tight. You open it. One more task. Tonight. Behind the Temple of Apollo. Come alone. Wear red. No signature. No seal. Of course. You glance at the boy. "Who gave you this?" He shrugs. "Woman with green bracelets." Vibia. Always the same jewellery, always just enough Ishtel to be noticed, but not questioned. You nod, hand him a fig, and he runs off. All day your mind churns. Why meet behind the temple? What task? And why red? It's a colour that screams for attention. Unusual, even provocative, especially at night. You don't like it. It feels like bait. Still you obey. You always do. That's the unspoken contract, isn't it? You play your role, and in return the game goes on. As night falls, you borrow a red tunic from Brynnia's costume trunk, a leftover from a festival or a role play, something worn once and forgotten. It's too tight across the chest, but you make it work. You braid your hair and pin it high, cleaner than usual, then you wait for the city to dim. The Temple of Apollo looms white and towering at night, its columns glowing in the torchlight like ribs of a sleeping god. You slip around the side into the shadowed garden where laurel trees grow like sentinels, and there she is, Vibia, hooded this time, her gown plain but unmistakable. "You're early," she says. You shrug. "You said wear red. I assumed that meant punctual." She doesn't smile. Her voice is clipped tonight. "There's someone I want you to watch. He arrives here every loony, prays, gives coin, then meets someone. I want to know who." You nod. "Just observe?" "For now." You melt into the shadows near the outer colonnade, heart beating in your throat. You're good at disappearing, but not here. Not in a sacred space where you don't belong. If anyone sees you, there'll be questions, punishment, maybe worse. You breathe shallow, watching the temple steps. After a while you spot him, robed, clean-shaven, middle-aged, expensive shoes. You recognize him. He's visited the Lupanar before. Once, maybe twice. Always quiet. Generous. Never gave a name. He kneels at the altar, whispers something you can't hear, then slips away down a side path. You follow at a distance, quiet as falling dust. He meets another man in the grove, a priest, judging by the robe. They speak in low voices, then exchange something. A scroll. The man leaves. The priest disappears into the dark. You return to Vibia, breathe shallow. She asks, "Well?" You tell her everything. She doesn't react, but something shifts in her shoulders, like a knot released. "That's all," she says. "You can go." But you don't move. "Who was he?" you ask. She hesitates. Then, "A man with too many ambitions and too few enemies. Until now." You nod, slowly. "And what happens next?" "That depends," she says. "Do you want to watch the world shift, or be part of the hand that moves it?" You don't answer. You don't need to. The gold in your pouch answers for you. When you return to the Lupanar, the hallway smells like wine and ash. Merope is dragging a stool back into her room with one foot, muttering about fleas. Ayla is asleep in your bed again. You leave her be. You sit down and begin writing. Not for Vibia, for yourself, a list, a new one. This one isn't names, it's plans. You want land, a roof, safety, but not just for you. You start with secure income, then establish safe house, then buy silence, with coin or fear. Your handwriting is sloppy, but your vision is clear. Historical note. The Temple of Apollo in Rome was both sacred and political. It wasn't just a place of prayer, it was a meeting ground, a statement of allegiance. Senators aligned with Augustus made donations there to curry favour. Deals were made in its shade. Secrets traded beneath its golden statue. Fringe detail? A priest in Apollo's temple was once arrested for leaking prophecies, for coin. Supposedly he sold divine messages to gamblers and politicians, who then bet on elections or trials based on omens. He was exiled, but his notes, scraps of goat hide, were found decades later stuffed inside the wall of a brothel. Debate whether women like Vibia existed in numbers or were anomalies. Some scholars say powerful women manoeuvred behind the scenes constantly, using money, marriage, and servants to bend politics. Others argue those stories are romanticised exceptions. You're not sure which side you fall on, but you know this. Vibia isn't the only one pulling strings. She's just the one who recognised that you could pull too. You lie back beside Ayla and watch the shadows on the ceiling. Your room smells of oil and girl sweat and stale perfume. But beneath it, something else is rising. A current. You're not just surviving anymore, you're playing, and you're getting good at it. The morning after your meeting behind the Temple of Apollo, Rome feels like a different city. Not louder. Rome's never quiet, but tuned differently. Like someone's tightened the strings and now everything hums with tension. You move through it with purpose, your cloak heavy with the scent of torch smoke, your head still spinning from Vibia's words. Do you want to watch the world shift, or be part of the hand that moves it? You said nothing, but you already know the answer. You slip back into your routine at the Lupanar, but it's become more illusion than reality. The clients still come, some familiar, some forgettable. You perform just enough to be convincing, but your mind is elsewhere now. Watching, calculating. You're tracking everything. Who comes in, who stays late, who tips in silver instead of bronze. You catch whispers. You memorize names. And every few days you deliver carefully folded notes to a vendor's cart at the forum hidden among olives and amphorae. The coins appear the next morning beneath your mattress. Vibia pays well, but she's not the only one watching you anymore. Brynnia corners you after dusk, her face pale beneath her usually ruddy complexion. She holds out a scroll. This was left for you. No name, no seal. You open it with slow fingers. You've made noise. Be careful what echoes. You don't let Brynnia see your reaction. You fold it again, tuck it into your tunic and meet her gaze. Probably a bad poem. She doesn't laugh. You're being watched, she says. Not by me. You nod. I know. Later that night, after your final client, a waxy man who insists on being called Imperator and falls asleep mid-sentence, you retreat to the back courtyard. Ayla finds you there, barefoot, breathing in the scent of crushed mint leaves from someone's abandoned drink. You look like you're planning to disappear, she says. Maybe I am. She sits beside you. Marcia sent word. Your head jerks up. She made it. The farm is real. The aunt's kind, the baby's healthy. You exhale, shaky. She said to tell you, don't wait for the door to open, build your own. You both sit in silence, and for once it feels peaceful. Not the calm before something, not the quiet that masks danger, just quiet. The next day you meet Vibia at the old granary near the river. It's late afternoon, the light gold and heavy. She's dressed simply, her hair pinned in a coil, her cloak dusty. You realise she's hiding more now, not just herself, but fear. They're looking into me, she says. Someone saw us at the temple. You stay still. I'm leaving, not far, just long enough for this to blow over. And what happens to our work? She looks at you, really looks. You take over. You blink. Excuse me? I've shown you the shape of it. You know how it flows. You know who talks, who listens, who pays. I'm a prostitute, Vibia, not a senator. She leans in. You're whoever you decide to be. That's the difference between surviving and escaping. She presses a scroll into your hand. Names, notes, addresses, then a second pouch. Heavy again, gold. "This is the last time we meet," she says. "At least for now. If you get caught, burn that list." And then she's gone, just like that. You don't look at the scroll until you're home. Your hands shake a little. You don't know if it's fear or power. Probably both. Back at the Lupanar, Brynja nods at you. Not warm, not cold, just acknowledgement. Something's shifted. She sees it. You hand her 2 names, men to keep an eye on, men who've been asking too many questions. She raises an eyebrow. "You trust me with this?" "I trust you don't want a riot in your atrium." She grins, just slightly. "Fair." From that day on, things move faster. You don't ask for permission anymore. You speak less and hear more. You arrange for one of the girls to stop working nights. She now gathers whispers in the taverns. Another starts recording overheard conversations in a wax tablet she pretends is for poetry. You're building something, a network, a whisper chain, a weapon. And then one night it happens. A senator's son comes in, drunk, smug, mouth too loose. He corners Ayla in the hall and grabs her wrist too tight. She screams. You're there in seconds. He shouts, "She's a whore, I paid." You don't speak, you hold his gaze. "And now you'll pay again." He sneers. "What, you'll tell your madam?" "No," you say, "I'll tell your mother, the one who funds half the temple, the one who thinks you're fasting this month." His face pales. You step closer, voice low. "I know where you sleep. I know who you owe money to. I know the name of the slave girl you made cry last week. Keep touching my girls and I'll make sure everyone else knows too." He stumbles out swearing. You let him go. Ayla looks at you like you've grown wings. You haven't. You've just decided not to be quiet anymore. Historical fact. By the end of the Republic, many brothels, especially those in urban centres like Rome, were informal hubs of surveillance. Servants, prostitutes and tavern girls often carried secrets from one patron to another. Whether for coin, safety or power, their networks rivaled the formal intelligence of any government official. Fringe detail, some Roman women, especially freed women with brothel experience, became private informants. One was rumoured to be employed by a praetor's wife to track her husband's affairs. She eventually vanished. Some say she fled to Egypt, others say she was silenced. Scholarly debate. Did these women hold real power, or were they simply tools used by the powerful? Some argue they were disposable, others argue they were irreplaceable. But the truth is clearer now. Power isn't just who gives the orders, it's who knows when to speak and when to stay silent. You finish the night on your cot. The silver mirror beside you. You unwrap it again, hold it to your face like you barely recognise the woman there. Not because you look different, but because for the first time, you look free.